one of them is
Oh, there you go.
I vote with Sue.
Thank you.
That should be okay.
Hey, Sandy.
I know.
I just know it wasn't me, Sandy.
It's been a day.
I think we shut it off, maybe expulsion the other day.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's
He's
all
running the meeting.
Are we good?
Okay.
I have one
Good.
question.
Yep, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just one question or one thought. To his point, but
Uh-oh, get ready.
no, at some point over time, we're gonna have to, somebody's gonna have to determine what's acceptable for a loss and not. And I mean, there's gonna have to be a penalty, and I don't care what anybody says, everybody can afford the penalty. Otherwise, they're not responsible enough to take care of it. So maybe that's a policy issue, but we're not gonna be able to, 2 years from now, if half of them go, if we spend 50,000 a year to be able to replace, everything. So above and beyond keeping track of it, there's gonna have to be some sort of decision as to what the next step will be.
Yeah.
Because once you let 5 kids go, 10 will go, and then it'll be 20, then it'll be 50, and then it'll be.
Right.
If
My
you-
my worry would be running into a school lunch debt situation where
Right.
we sort of, and we talked about this extensively last year, that we essentially obligate these students to the device. It's not exactly mandatory for them to get their education, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a balance of, we're telling you have to have this, and also you're on the hook for a significant amount of money if you damage it. But I do think you're right. It's probably something we would consider in policy,
Probably.
but certainly with input, probably from IT and finance.
Absolutely.
I do have just one other thing for sort of the future of the reporting would be right below the overall collected would be like the total outlay, the total amount that we've had to spend sort of out of pocket, something that wasn't covered by Apple Care. Just so that like we can get a good sense of, are we really undercharging for what it actually costs us to maintain these things? Are we overcharging? Are our repair costs 25% of what we're billing folks? Because we're not really in business. So if we can, based on the patterns, charge our families less for the protection plans, that's something I certainly would be interested in doing.
Okay.
So, great. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on the repairs?
Thank you.
If for the tech update, looks like it. Yeah, okay. Great. So facilities, Mr. Pazola, if you want to take it away with the presentation, or we just will go right into.
Yeah, we can go right into it. We have a presentation of where we are with the Torrington Middle School roof. I think everybody has a handout, and I'm gonna hand it over to Mark, who's gonna kind of go through where we are at the time.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much. We're pulling it up right now. But just in form of introduction, I am Mark Loringer, Gale Associates. We are architects and engineers located out of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Our headquarters is up in Rockland, Massachusetts now. But I've been with Gale for 25 years. I'm a senior associate partner.
Yeah, no, it's not blank.
If you follow along, we'll just go through it. There you go. If you want to go to the next slide, that's fine. So I mentioned about Gale, we've actually been in business for 60 years, not 59. Pay no attention to what it says on the screen. Privately owned, 7 offices across the East Coast, in as many states, but we do work in a number of other states as well. I'm hoping to get out to Las Vegas, Nevada this March to do a job out there. Want to jump to the next? We'll go to the next. What's really relevant here for experience for us on this project, on this roof project, is building enclosure up in your top left, building enclosure commissioning on the bottom right, and structural engineering in the top right. Those are really the disciplines that apply here for your roof renovation project. Client list: college, universities, a ton of municipalities, hospitals, Connecticut, we're not in the public sector schools too much, but Massachusetts, basically all of the communities, all the towns, all the cities, the same with Maryland, the same with Florida. Connecticut does business a little bit differently, but we're breaking into it after being here for a few years. So here we are today. Again, building enclosure, we are looking at your roof. And this really just highlights our expertise in roofing, how to build it right the first time. And we've seen these things fail so many times that we know how to do it right when we're designing your project. We'll go to the next one. And then structural engineering, really here for your project, the gravity load analysis and the structural augmentation design, if necessary, was applicable to your project. Jump to the next one. We've been working for Department of Administrative Services, State of Connecticut. We'll go to the next one to UConn over the past few years. And then I threw in the next slide, which is historic restoration. That is one of my favorite things to do. We're not always just designing roofs, but we get into a lot of other things as well. So it's enough about us, me, Gail. You go to the next slide, we'll talk about Torrington Middle School roof. So a little background on the project. When we got brought in, we were talking to John Barlow about, numerous water infiltration events at the school. And we were introduced to this Torrington Middle School 2021 roof operations facility meeting summary. It was a PowerPoint presentation that we were introduced to. And an RFP came out for the structural evaluation, which we've done. That led to an RFP process for the design consultant, which we are now. We're lucky enough to be awarded both of those contracts. Currently, we've submitted the schematic design level plans, specs, and evaluation report for the project. We're working on the design and development set right now, moving forward with the design. We're also looking at the Connecticut school construction grant process and those forms that are required to get reimbursement from the state for such a roof project. And then we'll also be involved in bid and construction period services. So real quick, can you enlarge that image down the bottom left? I don't know if you can do that in presentation.
No, not in presentation.
We have a copy of it.
You have it, you can see it. All right. So real quick, the existing roof that's up there right now. You have an existing, this is what you can see from the top, existing 2-inch deep standing seam metal roof, which will remain. This is not a rip and replace. This is going to be an overlay, and I'll get more into that. So it really is a roof renovation, not a roof replacement, and that matters from a code standpoint. Those metal panels are supported on a clip over sub purlins that are spaced at 5 feet on center. And over those sub purlins, there's about 6 inches of fiberglass bat insulation that's draped over those purlins. So you have some insulation value in that roof right now. Not a lot, but some. So that's your existing roof assembly. We go to the next one, our first award, the first RFP that we performed some services for the city of Torrington here. That was a structural engineering evaluation. So what we did was we looked at all the existing documentation that we had, and we did have some really good representative structural drawings of the original construction. So those were very helpful. We followed that by coming out to the site and actually getting up into these roof areas to measure and confirm what we had up there for the purlins and for the main carrying beams on the trusses. From there, we did our preliminary structural analysis and found that the roof that you have up on there, the snow loads that you have up on there, this structure is up to capacity even when we add additional load on top. And I'll get into exactly what we're adding, what we're proposing to add on top in just a minute. And that report was issued on the in 2022. So some of the things that we saw while we were out there, that both the structural evaluation, the roof deficiencies that we saw out there, review of warranties, review of systems, review of the longevity that Torrington Board of Facilities was looking for here. We looked at all those things, and what we decided to do, the preferred option was going to be this overlay system over the top of what you have up there right now. And this really just compiles a little image of just about all the defects that we saw up there, in addition to the ones I just showed. But we have rusted steel panels up there. All that black membrane is a repair. All the sealant that's on all the fasteners. All these things will be covered and improved without exposed fasteners in the new work to eliminate that maintenance requirement. So again, with all those things considered, structural deficiencies, costs, budgets, the decision was to go with that roof overlay. So the items, the systems that we did look at, if you look at that first sub bullet, the 2-coat reinforced liquid applied roof coating, that would have been over the existing roof. We ended up not going with that. The one that's highlighted here, the roof hugger structural standing seam metal panel overlay, is the one that we are choosing to go with. And in this situation, we can actually add another layer, about 2 inches of rigid insulation between the two panels to upgrade that insulation, that R value in the roof system.
Are we gonna be required to do that by the new code or no? Or is it an option?
Only if you remove your new roof.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes, and we are not removing it, so this would
Right.
truly be an option
It's worth it.
to select, yes, if the budget can accommodate.
But will it get it to current code with the 2 inches?
It's very close.
I think it-
It's very close when you consider interior, exterior air films, and I don't have that data here.
I'm just curious.
But it's very close up to the R30. The other option, the third sub bullet, rigid insulation cover board single ply, which we would fit in the existing flutes, would work, but it's heavier. It would change the look of the facility. So that was something we stayed away from. It would probably require more structural analysis and augmentation, so we went away from that. Another option that was presented was an asphalt shingle insulation and plywood sheathing overlay, which didn't work from a structural standpoint because the plywood won't span 5 feet from purlin to purlin. So that became a non-starter on that one. And then the replacement structural standing seam roof panels with increased insulation thickness. Again, without some benefits, by not removing, we don't have to increase our insulation values, and you're saving the cost of ripping and the risk with exposing the interior of the facility by ripping all the panels off. So that preferred solution is that roof hugger. It shows it in the bottom right. It's a transverse Z purlin that sits on top of your existing panels. Then the new panels are installed on top of that Z purlin. So that's exactly what we're showing in that lower left-hand corner there. Metal panels sitting on top of the roof hugger system, the roof sub purlins is what we're calling them. And then with that layer of rigid insulation in between those sub purlins and the existing standing seams. So that was all presented in the schematic design. That was December 2023, just from a time frame standpoint. And then we're moving into the design development phase here. So we jump to the next slide. That one is due March 11th. What I've shown on this slide here on the bottom left, there's going to be a number of raised mechanical and HVAC unit curbs. They're going to be required because we are raising the height of roof. It's only going to be about 2 inches taller, 2.5 inches taller than it is now, but it does impact a lot of the low flashing heights at some of these mechanical units. So there will be scope associated with raising those units and reflashing them as well. We'll be looking at snow guard replacement and supplements where we see the existing damage. We have some low flashing height at louvers and masonry, gutter enlargement, lightning protection, aerial terminal extensions at the ridges. We'll be further developing the school grant documents as well. And then we'll be issuing another construction budget estimate, which currently sits at $4.4 million, less any construction contingency. And if we skip to the next slide, I can just show a few images of existing snow guards on the lower left. Those are seam mounted snow guards. That's that transverse piece that's running perpendicular to the standing seams themselves. You've had some failures up there. The large image at the upper right, that is a displaced gutter due to damaged snow and ice guards above that location. That's actually on the gymnasium. So there's a long length of roof there that is really subject to a dynamic sliding snow and ice load. So we're going to improve where we have those long runs by adding additional snow guards. We can jump to the next one. Looking at low flashing height, we do have some gable end louvers. You'll see on the lower left there, and when we raise that roof, we'll be impacting that lower louver blade. So we'll be looking at options there, and maybe this roof area, just that very small roof area underneath the louvers, maybe that becomes a remove and replace, a very small portion, or we get into modifying those louvers at the base. So that's just something we're looking at. And then we know we have leaks at the rising walls where we have standing seam roofing going into the masonry. So there'll be new through wall flashings, brick removals, through wall flashings, and brick replacements at those locations. The gutter enlargement. So the original design plans showed a 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch tall gutter. When we measured it, it was a little bit different. We're going to enlarge these slightly to accommodate a 100-year storm event, which is like 8.7 inches an hour in a 5-minute period, which we've probably seen recently. Yeah. So we're going to enlarge the ones that are out there just a little bit more. We're going to replace them, I should say, with larger gutters. We'll include downspout replacements, and then we're going to reuse those existing cast iron boots that are on the base of the wall running into your below grade leader system. The lightning protection extension, that's going to be required where we have the ridge caps higher than they are now, which will happen in all ridges. To look at the kind of a tentative schedule for the Connecticut School construction grants. So we're planning on finishing our documents, obviously this year, 2024 summer. At that time, that's when the school construction grant office wants to see roof design plans. They want to see them at 100%. They don't want to see earlier submissions. So at that time, we'll submit to them. They'll have to review it and approve it for grant funding. Once that grant funding is in place, we can go to the Torrington boards, whoever that may be, and get approvals to fund the remainder of the money required to do the roof replacement. And then what we're looking at for construction, it says spring 2025 construction phases with the S in parentheses there, because we are looking at a phased construction period when the building is unoccupied. This is a large roof project at $4.5 million. It's a lot of area. It's tall area. It's complicated work at valleys, eaves. So we're looking at potentially 2 construction seasons from the end of school in June to August, both in 2025 and then in 2026. I am meeting with a roofer on this Friday, to see what they think about staffing this entire job in one summer. Don't know what they're going to say, but we're exploring those options. And when we do have that all finalized, that'll go in your front end documents for contract schedule. And I think that's all I have.
Are we gonna, maybe are you going to restrict this to the certain manufacturers? I asked that question because some are very weak right now, and they may not be here 30 years from now for the warranty, and there are others that have considered the best.
Correct.
Standing seam system.
Correct. And in the schematic design, we prepared an outline metal panel roofing spec that lists 3 go-to manufacturers. Yes.
I'll look at it.
I have a question for, probably for Dean, and you saw the holes in the flashing in the roof in 2022, right? So you showed the pictures of the
Yeah.
torn boots.
Yes.
Dean, do you know if we fix those?
Those pictures were in 2022?
The pictures I put in there are current last year.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we're out in the field. There are a lot of repairs up there though.
We've been patching that roof for 30 years, but
Mm.
that's.
It's been, there are leaks now that we got the crews going up to patching now, so is that exact one?
Well, I was
filled
just
in?
thinking, the rubber boot says they all tend to phase out from UV exposure and things like that.
Mhm.
You know, if we're talking another 2 years before this
Oh, I
roof
got
is
you.
finished, you're familiar with water in your office, right? So I'm just thinking some of these things. Too soon. Maybe we could look at
That's just probably.
addressing some
Yeah,
of those
quite
things.
quite a bit. More than one of our schools has roof leaks.
Yeah, some
So,
of them are
yeah.
obviously easier to fix than others, but
Yeah.
it's a stopgap.
Thanks on everybody's.
Yeah.
Just 2 things. You mentioned the ability of the roof existing to carry the loads. Are we gonna supplement structural
So
steel or do you think it can
at
handle
this
this?
point, no. At this point, no.
So that budget doesn't include that?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
But with the insulation, or is the option on the insulation gonna be?
Nope, we're safe. We're
Okay.
safe with the insulation as well. That's 0.24 pounds per square
Okay.
foot.
And if you go to
So
2,
it's quite
if
light.
you go to 2 seasons, will the roofers hold the price? You think?
So if we set the contract up that says you have the ability to roof into 2 seasons, and we set up the contract that way,
They'll be
their bid price will cover their prevailing wage increases and whatever inflation they're gonna carry for that time period.
Any other thoughts, questions from committee administrators? My one question, and I should know this, but it's changed so many times, is what funds already exist here for this? Do we have a simple-ish answer for that?
I'll defer to Scott on that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
No, it's great. I appreciate that.
That's
I'm sure it went down that way.
It's a great question. So I believe this is like a separate animal, like it doesn't come out of our capital reserve. I do have to confirm that now that they have somebody at the city, so I do have to meet with them and discuss with them, but it's my understanding that this is like a different animal, that they have to go out and bond it, and it's partial reimbursement from the state, which Gail is gonna help us with. So,
So they are gonna bond it, is the, okay.
yes,
I know we were, well, the city at least was hoping for the last couple of years to avoid bonding it, but yeah.
but we did have
Price
those
goes up a little bit.
discussions when John Barlow was still here, and we did meet with Michael's predecessor, also with the mayor, so that's why I know at least this much, but not
Right.
much more.
Okay.
There's one more. The state reimbursement estimate, do we still? We were talking at one time that our cost would be about $1.5 million, I think, or $1.4 million.
I don't know why the number of 73%
It
is
yeah,
rolling around my
between
head, but
72 and 73.
Yeah.
So it's been.
Is that what we're looking for? Okay. Yeah, so it puts us.
I don't really want to speak for
Yeah.
what they're gonna decide.
Yeah, I know, but that was the initial estimate, which
yeah, I
Sure.
think that's,
gets us to about.
We've used that in budgets, so
Right.
I'm guessing that's a solid
that's
Not a
number.
bad guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, very helpful.
These are here for taking if anybody wants them.
Yeah, those are 3 schematic design packages if anybody's.
Okay.
Yeah, if you like this stuff too, so.
Yeah, well, I know, they're here. so Appreciate
He
that.
likes technical stuff.
And,
Not on this committee anymore.
I don't have to say that. Your point is helping you out. Trying to help.
Okay, great.
and I have one of these in the house if we want to. I have 2 of
Oh,
them.
perfect. So if anybody wants to take a look
I
at
know
them.
where to find it if I need it.
it's your-
thank you for coming. We just thought it was a good
Yes.
idea
Yeah,
that,
thank you. No, I.
because it is such a high dollar project for us, so we do appreciate you coming in.
We do, we appreciate it.
Large capital.
It's been long running.
Yes.
Okay, I don't think, you shouldn't feel obligated
Oh,
to
you're kicking
stay.
me out?
You know, you could stay or you could. Unless you want to hear Dean talk.
You're more than welcome.
Exactly. Smart man.
Enough is enough, right?
I knew I liked that guy.
So we'll
Thank you,
go-
everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk.
Thank you.
We'll go right ahead for the capital plan status 23-24.
Oh. Can I do that?
Maybe.
Thank you. Sorry. Your father.
Okay, so, I believe in the packet is the, capital plan sheet that we have here as far as, what we have on tap for this year, and we have started a few of them, or more than a few. Kind of got in, tried to take care of the ones that I thought we could take care of quickly, without much design or other costs associated with it. And we can go down each one of them, if you just want to take a look at it, absorb it first here to see what we're talking about. A few of them, tonight we'll be talking about two of them that I'm looking for the board to approve. The second one on the list is the fire alarm system. We'll talk about that later. So the first one is replace existing windows covering. We have, I have some prices on that came through, pre me coming here, and, actually one price that I have on board for that. So we're just taking a look at that. I have it included. I want you to take a look at that tonight. The fire alarm bid, we'll talk about that in more detail. The emergency lighting upgrade, is a couple of different schools that I'm bundling together because we have that in a couple different schools that have to have that done, emergency lighting and exit lighting, kind of bundled together, looking at that, putting it together for pricing. And I'll get back to that in a second. Same thing with the window covering, as you see. The last one on the top part where the money came from, the sale of the school for Torrington remote gas equipment shut off. I got West State Mechanical taking a look at that. I'm in contact with the fire marshal. We just want to get some specs on that to see how many emergency shutoffs we do need before we get a hard number on there. So we're working on that. If you follow down a little bit more to Forbes School, installation of new water heater on the first floor. That's complete. We were able to complete that for $6,500, so we saved a little bit of money there. The third floor water heater, the same thing. We completed that for $9,700, so we were able to save a couple dollars there. The front entrance of Forbes, I had a contractor over there to clean up the front end so there was no more falling parts onto the entranceway. So he cleaned it up and it's ready to be parged in. Nowhere near the scope of work that this is there for, but I wanted to safe it off, and it's safed off for the winter. It doesn't look great, but they're going to come back now that once it gets a little warmer and parge it in, and then we'll kind of move on. My biggest thing when I first got there was a chunk of concrete
Right on the floor,
right on it. Yeah. So we were able to safe it off anyway. It's nowhere near that. $120,000 worth of work. It's about $3,500 to get it safed off. So that's
the total is gonna be 3,500?
yeah, just to safe it off.
Okay, what about when he comes back? We don't know.
No. When he comes back, he's gonna parge it in
Yep.
just to make it look decent,
Right,
but it's still not the scope of
close.
going even close to going in.
Oh,
You have
alright.
all detail up there, and there's a lot of things that was included. The front door was included.
oh, all right,
Kind of going back and forth again on the use of the school. Where do we stand on it? How far do we go with
the cost.
the cost of it?
We wanna put into it, right?
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go too far, but I did want to make it, I wanted to safe it off, and that's where we are
Yeah.
with now.
Perfect,
The 120,000 was to like structurally change the whole thing and
Okay.
kind of like essentially rip it down and
rebuild it.
back up. And
Okay.
our concern, like Dean said, was just get it in a it's not really used anyway, but if it is used in emergency, we don't want anything hitting anybody in the
Nobody's gonna
head
get
while
hurt.
they go out, so.
Good.
Is it a required emergency exit?
No.
No.
No, listen, in an emergency, every exit is required, but it's not, in other words, I talked to the fire marshal, he says there's enough, but it's an emergency, so you gotta make sure that you're not tripping going out the door or being
No,
stuck
I
at the end of the door.
But-
But it's not code worthy.
But if it's repurposed the building, you may not need
Well,
it.
who knows? Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Right.
Okay.
Again, that exit lighting is built into that other, altogether. I jumped down to Vogel Wetmore, exit signs there, the one below it. Media Carpet Center, we did get some numbers on that also. You see the numbers to the right are the numbers that I got.
Oh, there, okay.
Yep. Vogel Wetmore, mechanical engineering and heating development. That kind of, and I put a note next to it, we're gonna also talk about that a little later, is the indoor air quality piece that the state is requiring. And that may cover, we have money for that already put aside,
Mhm.
okay? But this additional money here may help cover the cost of that analysis. So it's pretty much gonna be a facility study just on the mechanicals that are gonna help the roofing project also, by the way. Hopefully the
good.
timing gets there with that, but I don't know if it will. So they really haven't done anything on that other than recognizing that it's maybe part of the indoor air quality RFQ we're gonna put out quicker than this,
Okay,
okay?
so that's good.
Yeah.
We could tie it all together.
Replace water heater vent piping, that is, that's something that could be done. I have West State taking a look at it. That's something that, we're gonna get a number on, maybe during the summertime, I can knock it out with the guys too, so I kind of left it alone only because it's low hanging fruit. Yes, it could be knocked out, but if I can save a couple of bucks and have to do it with the guys, then I'll do it, but I want to get there first. And if I can't, I'm sure 9,500, I'm sure we can get it done well within that.
Need my help.
I'll let you know. The venting of kitchen grease traps at TMS, that included a couple other schools, and this is all based out of our facility study. So we were at Forbes and I did some at Forbes and the middle school. And it's really not the vent piping. There's other issues with these grease traps that I've got replacement parts so far, and we're still kind of putzing around a little bit. And we're at about $8,500 now we spent on repairing them. The problem with them is and they're not a good design. And there's a smell that comes out of them. And everybody thinks it's the venting, and it's not the venting, it's the actual units and the way they're designed. But there's other things that you can do to kind of new weather stripping around them. We actually replaced some of the heads because they weren't working properly. So we went through them and we figured out the ones. I had the manufacturer's rep come out and figure out the ones that weren't working. And so
Good.
we may have a couple more bucks to spend on that, but I don't think we won't be anywhere near the $30,000 on that. And there may be some money that I'm not sure of that we spent before. I know that John did do some venting on them, and I'm not sure how much we have spent on that so far. Again, the exit signs that loops it together. Southwest, I haven't touched that. So just a matter of knowing the scope of work and writing a little bit up to put an RFP out. I haven't done anything with that. The Southwest engineering and installing the lock foyer. So the lock foyers, I'm going to touch on all three of them right now that we're working on. So the Torrington Middle School, we started on Monday. I kind of pushed these guys. I wanted to get it started. I know it's been held off. So we had 2 days to get in the building. They were able to go in and do a lot of demolition, pretty much all the demolition, and get it all done and cleaned up and ready for school. And they did a great job. Burlington Construction came in. Joe Alicata was there.
Okay.
They work with our maintenance guys, and I know that it went very well. So very little impact on the school as far as I don't think the kids would even notice. But as far as dust and dirt and sharp edges, it all went very well. They're going to come in April vacation to complete the project. So with this 2 day
Mhm.
head start, hopefully come April, they're done with that. So that's going well. So the reason why I brought that up is because of Southwest also. So I'm looking at different things. with Southwest. It's definitely less scope of work than the other two, which it will be Torrington next. And I had Cherry Hill Glass out to take a look at it, and I also spoke to Joy Alicata a little bit about it to see if maybe we can do this, not without a design, but maybe the scope of work, because it is a different layout. So I'm digging in on that. I don't have an exact how we're gonna handle that just yet. On to Torrington, resurfacing sidewalks, we're still in the process, haven't jumped into that yet. The lock foyer at Torrington is ready to go out to bid. Joe Alicata had to take, because as you guys probably know, the middle school and Torrington were a combined project, but there wasn't enough money, so they took the money and put it towards middle school, which left us with some money, but not enough to do the job. So it was kind of put on hold. And we have $135,000 for the job, but the job is a $250,000 job to do it. So we are a little short there, but I think we can make that up.
With the other savings that you.
With
have?
the other savings, especially the one that we're going to talk about later, the fire alarm system. The highest bid we got on that was 96,000,
I saw that, and we've got,
and we have 380,000.
yeah.
So we're hoping to.
Oh, good job.
This has nothing to do with me. But anyway, so we're hoping to maybe take a little bit of that money and cover the cost there. The other thing I did notice on the middle school project is not everything is included in the contract that we have with Burlington to complete the project. The electrical was never included, which was done for a reason, to save costs, so we can do it on our own. And I got Vision Electric taking a look at it. Some countertops that we made some adjustments. I was up with the principal. We kind of went over a few things just to make it more suitable for the needs, because it was a design by an architect, and it's a very good design. But there's other things up there that we noticed that, a couple more countertops here and there will help out a lot. So with Mr. Rinaldi, we kind of went over it with the builders a little bit. And they did give us a number to do it, and it was quite high. So we may figure something else out on our own and handle that like we're doing the electrical. Maybe we'll get somebody else in there to do a few different things. All right, so that's middle school's on its way. It's going. Again, touring forward. It's getting ready to be put out to bid. The ADA compliance, we still have to write the RFP for that, and install the child safety locks. The same thing. We have to put the RFP out for that. So, there's a lot of work ahead, and I'm digging in a little bit at a time here. I gotta kick it in a little bit with this, because we're getting close to the end of the season with this stuff, and we got to get this done. So that's where we kind of stand on an overall view. Is there any questions on that?
Questions on the capital plan?
Just a more comment than question. This is great. The freedom is amazing. If while you're working on it, though, we're going to have an opportunity to have a joint meeting with Board of Finance in March. So just making those adjustments, get that ready, and we'll be good to go, because this is all the stuff that they were asking about.
Okay.
Or updates on. So this is going to be very helpful.
So all of these numbers came from from the assessment that was done.
The facility study?
Assessment, yes.
They asked about that too.
Right,
actually.
so we're basing a lot of these numbers on that. As good as some of them are, we find that some of them aren't so good. So there's gonna be a little bit of a.
But that's okay. That's good. So
And
the
it's
second, well,
covered,
and
right.
one of the questions actually that came up that I forgot about, I was watching the meeting today, was the cost, the cost of the facility study, the outcome of it being upwards of $400,000. They want, what does that represent? They wanted a breakdown of that. So the fact that you've already answered all the questions.
Yeah, okay.
So just having them put together and ready to go is gonna be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Saying that, I talked to Mike and Scott about this a little bit. The 2024-25 I put together, I duplicated some of the stuff that was on the 23-22. Okay, it's on there.
So you just
the window
take
project.
that off, right?
So we just gotta kind of maneuver some stuff around, I
Fine.
think,
Yeah.
and to cover, especially with the additional cost that we're saving.
Yeah,
So it's not exactly like that. We're gonna have to kind of,
that's all right. You
Maneuvers.
had looked at it for 10 minutes when you.
yeah,
You had to get
and I still
something.
can't figure out why the hell I put it in there.
You only got the trouble for a couple hours.
Go ahead.
The capital plan is more of a guideline than the budget is.
And it wasn't presented to anybody. It was so.
Right, yeah,
Just us, yeah, we were
Just
the only
us,
ones
yeah,
that thought,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
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 I actually just picked up on it today and I went to these guys. I'm looking at it, trying to get rid of it. I'm like, oh, why is it on that one?
Yeah,
I don't
well,
have an answer for you.
but now that you know what was out there, so that makes sense, that's fine.
Okay.
Capital
Clean
plan,
it up and we'll be good to go.
capital plans always evolve. It just, you know. How it
Yeah,
goes. I don't
stuff.
expect it.
Yes.
So I think any other questions on the capital plan update? Okay, so we pretty much covered as well, the Lock Boyer status updates, unless anyone has any additional thoughts or questions, they would bring up, or if you had any additional information to share with us on that, but otherwise it seemed like you covered them as well as you wanted to.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I brought you in case you wanted to.
Yeah, actually, the project has gone phenomenally well. I appreciate that we had the ability to sort of hear exactly what was happening, which allowed me to prepare the staff and let the students know. So I couldn't be more pleased with how it's gone so far.
Great. Glad to hear that. So then moving right along, the fire alarm bid, you touched on it.
I did touch on it. So in your packet, I didn't make the copy of the whole bid, but I did make of what the specifications were. So if you look at it,
And then you did this little,
I did the little thing, but yeah, so being on the opposite side of this bid process, I'm amazed, to be honest with you. Well,
do tell.
yeah, so the first page, it kind of tells you, certain things that we're looking for.
Right, and yeah,
And
that the fact that they don't send it is.
the fact that they don't, that they
It's-
disqualify themselves in my eyes, and that's why I want you guys, without even putting all the work into
Right.
it, blows my mind.
Mhm.
So if you looked at this before you got here, I think Susan has, you can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Right on there, it says the entire package must be returned and initialed on each page to understand all requirements of the bid documents. Everything else, that's why I put that in there, because that was the biggest kind of flaw. And then again, if you just flip back to the specifications that were written for this, again, this was John put this together. I helped him a little bit, but this is pretty much him, and he's still helping me, by the way, on certain things. So he's been very helpful. It just talks about what we're looking for here with this fire alarm thing. The biggest thing that, and it's very difficult to explain, is when we're talking about a non-proprietary system.
Well, you know what? Can I ask you before you go on?
Go ahead.
We had a situation, and I'm wondering if this is it, where we couldn't get anyone to fix it because of that reason. Is this the same? Is this,
Could be.
okay,
Anybody, I don't know about anybody, but it would have to be a manufacturer's approved contractor.
distributor or
distributor,
contractor, right?
which-
And I thought something, and I can't remember, I didn't have time to research it today, but we had, I thought maybe it was a fire alarm system or a phone system where we couldn't get
No,
anybody.
you're right. You're right. It was the fire system and it was so old and is that what you're thinking
I
about?
don't know.
It
We
was so
couldn't
old
get it.
and
We couldn't
because
get
it was-
parts.
Yeah, I think that was a Southwest
Someone-
thing, and he ended up
person.
finding a part to make it work for a lot less money.
We did.
So he ended up, but it was a lot, it was John.
It was the general
Turning everything.
contractor that John was contracting with, who could work on the proprietary. And we had an,
Oh,
we
right.
had an- we had an issue with the
Yes,
middleman, so to speak,
That's what it
instead
was.
of going direct.
Yeah,
yes,
it was the
okay.
actual.
Maybe,
All
I don't
right.
have a correct.
There you go.
AC unit.
It was.
Yeah.
It was HBS with Swan Associates and West.
It was Swan.
Sandy knows. I'll defer to Sandy. Sandy, give it a nine.
I wasn't there. I wasn't gonna-
Sandy gave it a nod. We're good.
I couldn't remember.
So,
It was full, but
Yeah.
it was Swan.
It was so
Sandy.
fun, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry
Yeah.
to
No, that's okay.
derail us, but-
No, so what else I included on this was, the RFQ and also the addendum I put together after we put it out there. So the few things I was looking for were some quotes, as you can see, it'll be on this page here, page 10, would be, you know, how much they would charge after the system was installed, the service and all of this, just to get an idea.
Right.
You know, if you get from people out of town as opposed to somebody in town, or just to have an idea. So that's something I was looking for as an addendum that they can answer. Again, that gets to me to the final page on qualifying for the bid because one of the guys didn't do it.
Yep.
And then the rest I put on here were requests from information that they asked me. And I put the contractor who asked it, and then in the bold, I put my answers to them. They were looking for some as-bills. I ended up finding copies in the basement, went to UPS store. They got digitized. We gave them all the information they wanted. I had to talk to the fire marshal. So all of these questions were answered for them. They all had the same information. And then the bottom, the last question from Soundworks, actually, you mentioned his name, was, well, you want to know what the proprietary is. So I end up trying to put together as best explanation as I can of what the proprietary system is, just so everybody can be on the same page. Now, it's tough because you're going to talk to proprietary systems. You say, oh, not proprietary because 4 of us can buy it. And you think proprietary, you think one.
Right.
Um,
But it could be more than.
yes, yes. And there's a couple of manufacturers out there that are known to be proprietary.
Is that something we want to try to stay away from?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So if we get to the next page, page 12, that was part of the addendum, was their business hours and all of that stuff that you can see together. Soundworks gave a detailed list, FCS gave a details list, and WM did not include that in their bid. I don't know why it was an open bid. We had it in the back room. I opened in front of them. You know, there was just didn't include it. So, which brings me to the page 13, which is a checklist that I did as far as the things that we were looking for. They all came to the mandatory pre-bid. Entire bid package submitted. Soundworks did, WM did not, because they didn't include that in there. City-based bidder, the only one is Soundworks. Non-conclusion affidavit, again, WM did not include that. And initialing of all pages, 2 of them didn't do it, as you can see. And the addendum list, you can see who did that also. So the initialing of all pages is really the biggest thing, but you also got to look at the cost. So the low bidder is at $75,820. He didn't initial all the pages. Okay. The only guy that filled the whole obligation would be Soundworks, but he's the highest bidder. So that's where we stand. My recommendation, does that matter?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely matters, please.
I like all the boxes checked.
Yeah, I
Agreed.
agree with that.
That's, I mean, it sounds silly, right? Well, you
No,
didn't,
it's
you
not.
didn't
That's
initial the
right.
pages.
We didn't follow the
And if we're
instructions.
So, yeah,
if we're-
that's why I did initial.
If we're gonna put rules in there,
We gotta follow. them.
why, but that would be mine, but I'm
Yeah, I mean,
asking you guys to,
You have to wonder too, did he go in, he was $75,000, $20,000 difference. Did he do that intentionally? Did he not want it? Cause didn't he not submit?
no, he wants it.
Oh, he does, yeah.
It seems like you might just like miss some initialing
Oh.
and based.
Well, in this business, that's not what happens.
Well, my
That's
other
the only
question
people.
is,
Yeah,
my other question is, well,
Yes.
I care more about $20,000 than I do about weirdos in the industry, but
Well, it's not that.
my other question is, how often do we have to have these things serviced? Because the Soundworks does have, despite being the high bidder, a substantially lower service cost.
Mhm. You know, with a new system, like this year, not much, but as these things get older and they're proprietary system, so FCS is non-proprietary, the low bidder is not proprietary. The guy in the middle who disqualified himself is a proprietary system. Okay, so on that stage, again, how much? You can't really put your finger on how much do we do now? Well, we have pretty old buildings and we're constantly doing something with the fire alarm system. Especially up at the middle school with the communication thing going on up there and the internet service and all that. And that may not make a difference to this right now. We still might have that because the way Verizon works up there. Is it Verizon? Who's our internet?
we have,
Yeah,
Frontier, correct?
Frontier. I meant Frontier. So, you know, as much as anything, the mechanical.
Right. Is Soundworks proprietary?
No.
Okay, so they're not. That's good. That's all I got, Jeff.
With all these alarm systems comes a monitoring fee.
Mhm.
What was the difference in that recurring revenue, a recurring fee between the two companies? Because we're hiring them to put the alarm in, then we're gonna pay the annual fee.
So that is different. So that's not included in this. So this is installation of new equipment. And so your monitoring would be through, could be through Soundworks, but that wasn't included in here. This was to replace the equipment that was in there.
Okay, so it's not anybody's contract that they would become the company to monitor?
Nope, not under this.
Okay.
And same thing with service, or we're not obligated to service.
No, first year, no, that's why I put it in there because it's their equipment. So first year, obviously they owe us. And then after that, what are you going to charge us to come out? And that's why I broke that out like that.
Who monitors them now?
The Torrington Middle School is Soundworks. Torrington Middle School is Soundworks. Yes, Sonatrol is our intrusion.
In some of our buildings.
Yeah,
Just real quick, when I'd say checking the boxes, it leaves him open to change orders is the problem. But that's something you gotta figure out if you're gonna go that route. I don't vote tonight, so, but anytime somebody doesn't,
I
initial
understand
page,
what you were
yeah.
implying. I would.
Yeah. you gotta wonder why, but
Didn't want to impugn anybody we might be about to do business with.
no, I know.
But I understand what you're.
That contract, they just want to get what they can get.
But so your recommendation, sorry, just to be perfectly clear, is that we should recommend to the board the Soundworks bid.
that would be my recommendation.
Anything else, especially from you two folks who are gonna be the deciders on what we recommend? No, okay. What's next there then? There's my agenda page. Sorry, I'm lost. Oh, okay. So I guess at this point, since we don't really include sort of voting later in this agenda, if you guys would like to just sort of, I'll hear a motion at this point, from you to recommend a bid to the board. Yeah, but they just, there's no,
Okay,
they don't
so you're
break out
doing it
these of
piece by piece.
yeah. So if one of you wants to make a motion or something,
Go with his recommendation.
if that's what you'd like, I'll hear any motion you want.
I will, I,
Dean, the document says that they have to fill it all out, right?
First page.
Yeah, it's right in the first
So
paragraph.
there's only one choice.
Great. So Ellen moves and Jeff seconds then to recommend to the full board the Soundworks bid for the fire alarm bid. All those in favor? Great. So the last thing would be the HVAC and air quality testing for state mandates.
Yes, so I know that this is evolving as we speak, this whole mandate of what we're doing with this. This, what I put in the packet would be the start of an RFQ to go out to get prices on this. We have money set aside for this to do this study. It's something that, again, ties into a lot of our buildings, our HVAC systems, and it's almost perfect time if you look at it, that they're kind of forcing us to do this study, which is going to help us in the long run. So that's the start of the RFQ right there. And we'll just have to kind of, take a look at it. And I've got a lot of language from New Milford put this together, and took a lot of language and kind of put our wording in there and stuff like that. But it's following the mandate that they put out there. And I think we're ahead of a lot of towns because we have money already aside for it. Where other towns are just putting this together. And I'd like to get this out as soon as possible, refine it a little bit and get it out as soon as possible because we are ahead of the game with it. I don't want everybody else to catch up to us.
Do we think we'll have access to any state funds? I know the requirements initially were almost impossible to meet, but my sense is that that's changed and that they may actually be dispersed.
So Dean has worked with Don, our grants writer, and so in tandem, we're hopeful. I mean, I'd hate to say definite or guarantee or put a percentage on it, but I do agree with your assessment that I think while it was more unknown, it's a little more clear that they are going to back this project with some dollars. So if Dean can roll it in, and then as we know, We put a big chunk of that in our capital anyway to kind of offset a lot of it. So as Dean was suggesting that the perfect timing, I think it is the perfect timing. So if we do receive those grant dollars plus our reimbursable rate, it does offset the cost for all the taxpayers in the city.
Right.
So I am positive on that.
But you understand, this is just a design and a study. This is
Mhm.
not the actual
Right,
work
not
to
the
go
work,
into it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand.
yeah,
I want to make
yeah.
that clear that it's just to give us almost like the facility study, but it's based on mechanicals.
Right. My sense, and maybe I'm wrong, then it might be helpful to know. My sense was that there were two different pots of funds, one for the actual projects, but one for the costs for the studies, because
Feasibility studies.
every school district in the state was a little bit upset that this significant expense was coming.
Yeah, so and that's the HVAC grant that we're talking about. It's two different things,
Right,
the indoor
right.
air
Okay.
quality and the HVAC grant.
But you're right, Mr. Gray. There was a talk to offset the study component, but I think what a lot of districts are doing, I'm not saying all, we're trying to weave it into the two. Once you had your study, then try to offset it better with the grant. So while they are separate, as Mr. Pergola is saying, they're trying to weave the two that way.
We can get
Not
some
too
funds
separate,
from each,
exactly.
right? Okay.
And we have a lot of eyes on this because I meet with the Casbo folks every week, and this is number one topic that's asked. So, and nothing is in concrete right now, but soon as somebody gets a definitive answer on all of these questions that we all have, we'll take action. And, I forward anything on to Dean anyway, that comes to me in regard to this. So
I imagine the folks at the Department of Education are doing the same thing we're all doing, which is waiting to see if the legislature is going to revise this for a third time.
Third time's a charm, they say.
But I'm glad to know that it's moving along. So do you think for the next facilities meeting, you may have something or?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Anyone else have anything? I sort of monopolized that discussion. Great. With that being said, topics for future meetings. So we'll have the HVAC air quality testing stuff. We'll hopefully have at least a couple more bids based on the capital plan update. What else you guys got for future meetings?
If I may, I believe we meet before we meet with the city for the capital, so maybe just one final 24, 25 before we present it to the city. Might be in order for this committee. There's things that we might add and delete as Dean was referencing. I think it's important to have just one clean copy.
We'll of course have a tech update.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
That's standard. No, I'm just throwing stuff out there. Anyone else have anything?
Can we, if we do end up materially under capital budget with that 380 versus 96, can we pull projects ahead? How does that?
Yeah, capital funds, my understanding has always been that we're not held to the line items that we submit in the same way that we aren't for our regular budget. We just have to follow the rules on what we can spend it on, but we could probably find us some projects to spend the money on if it comes down to it. We just can't hold it over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just to show that we're in the works with it. Correct. Mhm.
Okay, comments for the good of the order. We'll start with our committee members. Jeff.
Great meeting, everybody. The presentation on the roof was thorough, so that was cool to see. And I appreciate everybody's time.
Well, great meeting, a lot of information.
Pleasure to come back for a meeting.
Nice to see you here.
I went, thank you. Yeah.
We've missed you.
Missed you, Gary.
I gotta leave now. I do have to do, but
See you.
For budget.
I can't. Let's flip me on the phone now.
What?
Okay, then we'll move the comments to the good of the order.
Meeting at 7.
Great meeting.
Go.
You want-
Nice to see you all.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good meeting. Welcome back, Rachel.
nope, great meeting. Thank you.
Good meeting. So happy to have Rachel back.
Same, welcome back, Rachel and Dean. Great job and good job pointing it out. You know, you were here for a short time when it was first initiated, but your thorough look at it is much appreciated. And, we can definitely make the adjustments. And thank you to the board for being so supportive and understanding of that. So good job.
Yeah, I think the clarity around the capital plan is like nothing I've ever seen. It seems I'm
Seems to
just.
be
That seemed better.
Yeah.
At all the meetings he's at.
No, instead of a point of order, I will hear a motion. to adjourn.
Are you there?
All right, there you are. Yeah, he's on. Yeah, John's on. I don't know about Jason. but
John,
John's-
Jason is not,
John.
he's not coming. He sent you a message?
Yeah.
No, but he's still
Okay.
dialed in to listen. Yeah.
Okay,
That's part of the.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call to order at 7:17. Roll call, Jeff and I, and all others that are here. Motion to approve the agenda,
So moved.
a second, all in favor, so carries, approval of the minutes,
So moved.
second, all in favor. Any public participation? None? Okay, discussion and next steps, we'll move right on to monthly financials.
Thank you. So, I did send out both December and January as requested. I'll go over January, but before I get started, because this will fold into the budget somewhere. So we, now that we have Marissa working, for us to fill the position of secretary, and Dean's a little bit on board, we kind of have our, we kind of have a system down now for the monies we charge our fees from renting out the property. So, as I wrote down on the first or second report, or this report,
What page are you on?
Except for the minutes.
no, it's
Right,
not
right,
numbered.
the first one, got it.
Yeah, but, so the revenue we've collected year to date is 61,8235. And at the time, we had invoiced 13,220.70, because we've kind of been a little behind because we didn't really have anybody to do that. Since then, we've actually received payment and deposited it. So those monies have been deposited into our revenue account. And I know that the question had come up before, if we want to offset our custodian overtime with that, which I would suggest we do, that we do. Because, you know, as we know, part of our fee structure or part of our obligation is to have a custodian present there, which we are paying them overtime to attend these functions. So I just wanted to point that out because this will also come into play when we talk budget later on. So that being said,
Thank you.
I will go to page 1, and I've highlighted, again, if we want to do this the same that we've had in the past, I've highlighted some line items and I'll go over what happened with those line items, and then if anybody has any questions, just
Are we looking at January?
yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we don't need to do both.
No, we don't need to do both. So if we go down
It's page
to,
105.
yes, I'm on 105. And I'm going down to the 5120, which is near the bottom, unless anybody has any questions on the certified and non-certified, but everything's really tracking along as it should. So with the tough substitute salaries and the substitute clerical, we know that we are over budget, and that is because these are the on the substitute salary line, which is a 5120. These are predominantly our VRIP subs that owe us time. So they're just getting coded to that line item. And the substitutes for clerical, we have had some substitutes in the clerical position. So there's not really a story there other than, you know, we've needed more people working there than we anticipated when we budgeted last year. So if I go to page 205, the first one is the tutors special ed, the 5121.15 tutors special ed. And again, this was these are the students that need a tutor who are suspended and were special ed. So that's just, again, just more students than we anticipated having. So that's what that line item is.
Yeah.
If we go down to the 5130.30 and 0.80, again, those are our overtime wages to clerical and custodian. Again, if we were to use some of those monies to apply to the OT custodian, which I suggest we do, then that number would come down. And then again, the OT wages for clerical, we've had a lot of transition just in this building alone, as well as in the schools. And we also know that some of the secretaries help out with the busing. So that's also adds to our OT on those lines. Again, hopefully next year, some of those costs will funnel out once the high school comes online. So, and I've taken that into a little bit of consideration, even though it is only going to be for 4 or 5 months next year. I did take that into kind of consideration when we budgeted for those.
Right, and the new TA contract, I think the elimination of
That'll
flex time.
Yes.
will help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The next one, if we go down to 5210.01, which is the HSA deductible. Again, and this is sorry, this is because that's the only the credit is because twice a year the bank will send us monies back. So if I put in too much, then they're gonna credit me back because I put too much in. And then some of it is the money that the board put up and the people just took too long to set up their accounts or didn't set up their accounts. So they credit us back a couple times a year, and that's what that credit represents. I highlighted the 5211, the life long-term insurance. That's, we'll look, a lot of these are the encumbrances coming into play here, and I just really haven't had time to look at the encumbrance. So I'm not too concerned if they put us in a over budget position right now, because it is due to the encumbrances. And once I get a better look at those, I'm more concerned with the ones that we really know what's causing them. Again, the retiree insurance is the next one, the 5280. We all know that each month, each time we see this, that number will keep going down based on the retirees that contribute to their own benefits. I don't have anything else on this page. If I go to page 3 of 5, and we go down to 541101, the sewer. So I needed some levity to the meeting. So I actually spoke to a person. I take that back. I didn't actually speak to a person, but they have left me 2 voicemails and I have left them 2 voicemails, and they are in Trumbull. So we're getting close to actually speaking. And once I get a little bit more time, I will make even a more concerted effort. But again, that's, we know that something fishy is going on there. It's not, $11,000 is $11,000. I'm not making light of it, but we know that at some point we'll figure that out and hopefully get a credit there. The next one is just the disposal services, and that was just Torrington. Again, that has to do with the encumbrance, but I do know that on top of that, at the beginning of the year, we had to call for some more carting that Nick told me about at Torrington. So there was some additional spending there above and beyond our contract, but I'm not too concerned about that either. The athletic rental, we've gone over every month as we do with the sports complex. On both of those numbers, though, I did take into the actuals into account for when we budget for next year. So I think we budgeted, or I know that we budgeted properly for that. Again, the other one is the 551001, which is its transport summer school. We talk about each month. We just spent more than we anticipated. We had more students, which is a good thing if you think of it that way. So we're a little over budget on that. Next one is by turn the page. 4 or 5, the tuition for BOAG. Again, this is just spoke to them at length. This is just due to the services that we deliver to special ed students, and think that's really all I could say there, so it doesn't, so people can't figure out who the student might be. If I go down to the 556102, on this one is though purely for there is more students in the sped exploration than we anticipated. So that's not due to services or anything. It's just due to more students. And the 5564, again, that's over budget due to the expulsion that we're aware about. We're aware of. One thing I do want to point out, and I guess I leaned over and I didn't mean to, on the transportation line, because it's not that we're under or over budget there, but we did Ashley working with Donna got us, there was a grant out there for the homeless transportation, so we're looking to get a credit of $20,000. I'll let you know exactly when we do get that money, but we're gonna get it, so I just wanted to call out how working together to get that, which is a great thing. And that's really all I had for the monthly financials. If anybody has anything. Sure.
Just for clarification, a couple of things. 5620. I'm just looking at my questions. It's bus fuel. Is that for the buses? The regular school buses?
Bus fuel, that's yes.
Right.
That's
And
hope, I
so
guess.
it's not, the fuel's not included in the contract that we have with.
No,
them.
not the propane, no.
The
Okay.
contract spells out that we have to,
Yes.
In addition to, okay.
same
I
thing,
don't know
like
why
we
I
have to buy
didn't-
the buses.
Yeah, and it's
Okay,
multi-year. I actually have the contract out. I just don't have it memorized, but it's like a multi-year. Ed signed a
I believe you.
multi-year contract with all kinds of.
Okay.
They
But they're-
store it there for us, but
Right.
Right, but they're also going to more propane than gas. They're adding more.
we're all,
We're all propane now?
all of our
Okay.
buses are all.
Yeah.
propane.
Yeah.
Because the
Okay.
buses can only be 5 years old per the contract.
Okay, so we've already changed
Yeah.
over. Okay,
It's 100% propane.
great.
And then Jesperson, did we finalize that payment schedule with them?
Yes, so I thought I pointed out last meeting that I misspoke. I was looking at the
Maybe-
What was I looking at?
Sorry.
I wasn't looking at the payments, but whatever Gary said, the twice a year that we pay him or
Yeah.
times a
Right.
year, that's when we pay him. We don't pay him. I don't know what I was, I think I was looking at the encumbrances or something, but I was looking at the wrong sheet. But,
Okay. Cause I just saw that there was under landscaping, it looked like. There was, I didn't write the line item down either, I'm sorry. There it is. 60, I just saw it.
Probably not this one too.
So I guess my question was. Transactions. So it looks like he's almost been paid in full.
Yeah, those were the two payments that were made. He's been paid in full.
He has.
Yes.
So we're done paying him
I believe
and
so,
we're gonna.
unless
go to bid.
there's any ad hoc work that he
24,
does for us.
25
He has one more. year.
One more year.
School year.
That's what we determined last time when we pulled this.
All right.
Because we had said we should look
Right.
into it, but he had one more year, so we would definitely do it. Next year, we'll start the process. or-
Well, can we?
Next
and
year is his last year.
Depending
Right.
on how the spring cleanup looks. I would like to put out there, if we experience what we experienced last year, we need to look at breaking that contract.
Can I have a detail what that is? Not now, but let me know what
Yeah.
that is.
You're talking the clay issue,
The
right?
clay issue
Yeah.
with the fields,
Yep.
the maintenance just not being
I'll
done.
go over with.
And they literally, we paid extra to have him do the fields, which I thought we shouldn't have done because what are we paying you for? If getting our fields ready isn't part of spring cleanup, I don't know what is. So we had to pay extra for clay, which was literal garbage. And they were out there picking up glass shards and garbage out of the clay. And if we're up to me, we would have done it last year. We would have looked at breaking the contract. If it comes back to that again, I don't think that we should be giving him a whole other year of service of payments. I just don't,
I
he
would,
had plenty of notice.
I would agree, and I think having Dean on board, looking at that, and I think it's gonna be very similar when Scott took the reins on the snow removal contract and then Dean came on board.
Mhm.
I think when having someone around who's watching the scope of work and watching to make sure it gets done. You know, I could say with 100% accuracy, Dean is on site when we have snow removal and or ice removal. So the contract we have with that current company, not that they wouldn't be doing it if Dean wasn't on site, but having, to your point, that extra set of eyes. So I think when we fast forward to this year with the Jesperson's contract, having Dean on site to make sure the work gets done is going to be paramount. And then if not, when we go out to with our bid for the following year, we'll make sure, because Dean would have then a full year on almost a year and a half under his belt.
Right. With
To
more,
really document what needs to be done to that specifications, because we can't have the facilities looking unappealing.
and it wasn't even safe.
Yeah.
The girls couldn't even play.
Right, if I might add a little context to what you just said too, this iteration of the contract with Jesperson's Landscaping, it's not the first one. And there were some problems with the first one, so this one was designed by John to be much tighter than the previous one. So there are, like, we had to put in the contract, this is when you have to mow the lawn.
Yeah, we had to go
Right,
that far.
like my mom used to,
Yeah.
as a teenager. Only I wasn't making six figures.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we pay a little better than that, unless you did it really. Yeah. Wow.
So, so just so you know,
Yeah.
just so you know, I wasn't fully aware of this clay issue. Clay has already been delivered
Oh,
and
it has.
spread,
Okay.
okay?
Oh, all right.
That was
So
done.
that's, okay,
Through Jefferson, though,
okay.
at a charge. He
Yes,
went
sir.
and got more clay from a vendor early, so he didn't run into this problem.
Okay, for this year, you mean?
For this year,
Okay.
it's spread right now. It's not fine
It's
tuned.
not playable,
It's
but
not
it's
playable,
not,
but it's been out
garbage.
there. It was out there. It sat. We got it while the ground was frozen, so we didn't dig up the grass.
good.
So it's already been out there. We're gonna be paying for it soon. He's just billing us for it, but
Okay.
it was more than. When you add clay like that to the fields, and I went to the athletic directors, we went to the coaches, and I walked it, and it needed clay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it needed clay.
Right.
So
It
it's,
needed it last year.
yeah, so if you're suggesting then that should be included in the next contract, then it's gotta be said, excuse me.
Sure.
That's more than maintenance.
I get that,
Adding clay
right.
is more than
Okay,
maintenance.
you're right. But getting the fields ready.
Yeah.
A set, clay set aside.
Yes,
Getting the fields ready, striping, putting the
Yes,
bases
yes.
back out. Like, to me, that's part of your prep.
yeah,
your spring prep.
and in this contract too, I noticed that there was like taking stuff on and off the field that we're paying extra for that was not
It's
in,
not getting,
it's not in the
Part of
contract.
what we're doing and
Oh,
what Dean
okay.
and I also talked about is we're gonna have Carrie pull all the invoices that we received for all these extra things, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna figure out what should go in and what shouldn't go in the
in a
contract.
contract,
'Cause
okay.
we agree with you that, all his little ad hoc
One-offs,
things when we're
like,
paying him
here,
a
they
couple
added-
$100 is a lot of money.
Yeah,
And some of the things just, go hand in hand with, your obligation to do it. So, we are working on that, and that's why we chose to have the clay delivered now,
Right now.
because it was good clay, and, instead of having it in the spring where there was some,
the
we
day
didn't want
before their
the,
first game and.
we didn't want the issue to happen again, so.
Good. All right. That's good. At least you're ahead of the game.
Mm.
That's really good.
Well,
news.
purposely, because I heard it all though.
Yeah. No pun intended.
And also having a conversation with them, letting
Absolutely.
them know,
Yeah, no, yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Great, thank you. Sorry to get sidetracked, but
oh, that's okay.
wanted to just make sure.
No,
that was-
I think that's appropriate.
It's important.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have,
That's it.
Ellen.
Yep.
Budget 24-25.
All right, let's
Drum
roll.
roll.
Drum roll, please. So, Rachel, if you don't mind,
Thanks for.
everyone's waiting. So, little bit of a change. So Rachel, having Rachel back has been awesome. And the board is going to receive a little bit of a present this evening.
Oh, we're getting.
Presents, every board member will receive an iPad this evening.
An iPad.
Yes, so we're
Just keep mine.
really cool. So we have an iPad because as you've seen the presentation is in a book format. So if you go on to the iPad, and for some of our board members who are not here, we're gonna make sure they get theirs. Rachel, Sandy could use one of the.
Straight up.
It should come right up.
Yeah.
We thought it was dark, but it was not dark. Would you want to buy one on?
You want
Look, oh, it's got a keyboard.
Is it online?
It's going to be. Yep.
Oh,
Everything's gonna-
do you want to see it closer? She could look at mine. Oh, okay.
So the bottom's got a kickstand like mine does. So flip to the back behind the screen. And it's a kickstand right, or it just pops out.
Right there.
Goes up.
Yeah.
Everybody have it up? They see it?
And then flip that orange.
Look at you guys.
I can tell.
almost got-
In the corner.
Does it stick?
Boy, too
Look at
bad Gary's not.
Rachel.
I'd like to see him fumbling with this thing.
Mess around.
Should give his pivot before he left.
Oh, true.
So,
Oh, I like this.
right, isn't that neat?
Is it a touch screen? No.
It's Apple because you got your own fancy one.
So-
You get to sit.
Just unless there's something I need.
I know, I already have
You do actually.
two.
You're gonna have your
I'm gonna share-
drive and
so-
everything.
Rachel was gonna share the other exciting stuff. Rachel, that you know about the drive.
Drive and everything will be here.
Yep, so Google Drive is on there and you have the agenda and minutes folder already shared with you. So you can go and look at any future or current or previous packets, minutes, all the agendas, anything like that.
So if you remember when Sue.
Really happy.
When Sue pulled up those minutes. When,
How much time I spend
I
on
know.
our website looking at things.
I was just gonna compliment you at the last board meeting
Look
when
at
Ed
that.
had asked if
It's
we
all
could
gonna be
find that.
one-stop shopping.
And you dug it.
Yeah,
So-
I had
Yep,
it.
so you just log in with your Google account and it'll be right in your Google Drive under shared drives. And if you need help finding that or logging in, just let me know. I can help after the meeting.
We need our passwords, right?
Yes, yeah, same thing you used to log into your. Torrington account.
I'm happy everyone likes the code. This is great. First thing, check. No more bulky binders. This is your bulky binder.
Where do I get back to that?
So. You don't have yours up? Yeah, you good?
Jeff's helping me.
All right.
Was he up?
How do I get back?
Just hit the keynote.
Yep, it's the blue one at the
This
bottom.
is what happens everyone when you're a math
Okay.
teacher in an elementary school and you hand out the manipulative.
Yeah.
Teacher, thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Thank you.
See, to
Thank
keep it
you.
with the budget theme. Uh-huh.
So, thank you. And, you know, the presentation tonight, I just wanted to obviously take a moment to, this is the first time the public is obviously seeing it. You know, a little different process this year, but I wanted to thank the hard work of the administration team. I mentioned that at the board. They really did their homework. And when they came forward to sit down with the central office team to ask for respectable budgets for their building and in essence for all of our students, they really had that in mind. And with that focus, we were able to come up with a budget which we feel is very respectable to the taxpayers in the city. The next group of people I want to thank is the central office cabinet team. You know, sitting down and listening to the budgets. Well, it's a highlight of my day because I'm a math geek. Might not be the highlight of others' day. So we really kind of sat through and worked out and see what we really need, what we don't need to present this budget for you. And then as this board is aware, this budget was shared. And thank you so much for the questions that this board has asked in advance. The questions were asked and we had time to prepare thoughtful responses to your questions, which I hope you realize that were shared back with the entire board. And in that same light, in order for us to be respectful and have that thoughtful response, any questions that may come up as a result of tonight's presentation, we ask that you just email them to us again by next Wednesday. And we will have those answers back to everyone. I'm going to take you through a couple of slides, then I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Now, the one thing that's kind of still in flux is our insurance numbers. We have not received our insurance numbers. We do partner with the city. So we are waiting for that number. So while that is flat in our budget, I want everyone to realize that could go up. I don't think it's going to go down. Pollyanna and me says I'd like to go down, but I don't think it will. And it could go up and push our budget close to, you know, the 4.8, 4.9 range, give or take, depending on the increase that we see. Likewise, which Scott will talk about, and I don't want to steal his thunder, we literally just got hot off the press, our liability insurance. So that was just shared with us yesterday. So when Scott takes you through some slides, he'll show where that bumped up. And then one of the other questions that came from the board members was, hey, do you think we should offset, and Scott mentioned it in his presentation tonight, for some of our overtime? And if the board pleases, we can definitely up that line item as well to cover us. So Scott has that as one of his scenario questions. So I kind of like the presentation as a book, and that's why we kind of did this as a flip book, right? Not as the old multi-binder, not as the PDF that we would throw online, but as a real book. And what does it come down to? It's our Torrington family, and I've used that word that we're a team, and I've used that word that we're a family. So what better way to start our presentation than to share some of our family? So your first 2 pages of your book just share some highlights from the year that you've already seen on social media. And then it's not about just the numbers. It's the story behind the numbers. And it's not a story that's fake. It's a story that's real, and how it impacts all of us here in Torrington and how the numbers apply to our students. So that is why we took the time to write the narrative and to show how it ties in with our vision and mission. So when we look at our numbers, how do the numbers impact students each and every day? How does what we ask for correlate back to our classroom? And if we couldn't do that when our administrators came to present, we didn't put it in here. And I can tell you, they did a great job on that. And to Scott's credit, challenging our administrators, I'm going to ask you 3 times, and he literally did it every meeting. Does this meet the needs of our students? And each and every time they were impressed, but they said, no, this does. And that's why you'll see the slight increases that Scott will talk about momentarily. So if we look at overall, right, here's the drum roll, where are we? So we're currently at 3.34% request from last year's budget. And as Scott alluded to in his meeting earlier, actual numbers. So actual where we are to actual where we want to go. And as I said earlier, this could change depending on that insurance, but a respectable number of 3.34%. I think anything under 3.5 is a very respectable budget to come at it, especially, and I'm not using the first year excuse, that's not what I'm using, but in my first year, Dean's first go around, a couple of other folks' first go around, to come in at 3.5, I think is very, very respectable. In terms of staffing, and I shared this with our TEA president, I don't want to call you out on a video, Sandy, but I will. She's awesome, by the way. So what we did was, where else can we go? We don't want to cut staff. We don't, because that's our lifeline with our students, right? But we all know that we have an increased ELL population. We know that. And we know that we're seeing it up, which is wonderful. I love it. I think it's great. We're celebrating that. And so we have to address those needs as well. And how do we address those? And the best way to do that, in our opinion, was to add 1 new ELL teacher and 2 paraprofessionals. And that ELL teacher will be split between Southwest and Forbes, while the 2 paras would stay in-house to continue to work as the teacher goes back and forth. We would love to add a second, depending on the success of the first. We didn't want to go 2 at first until we saw how successful we'll be with this model. So as we talked about, I like to give kind of a synopsis of where we're going and how it plays out for the public, because this is the first time the public will see it, right? So we explain the process, our administrators, our central office, our Board of Education, and then obviously we will at some point be ready to go to the city once everything is finalized. And we have our budget timeline, so we're right in line following our budget timeline. We're in perfect working order there. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott momentarily, but I want to share that when you look at a budget as a whole, it's easy to say, where does this fit in, right? So, and I love the last conversation. I'm glad it's springboard, right? We had a great conversation about transportation, for example. People forget transportation is an integral part of the school system that we pay for to transport our kids to and from school safely and efficiently and on time. Part of our budget, a big part. And as we shared earlier in the meeting, we have a contract for that. We have a contract to fuel those buses. Those little components that we may not tend to think of, as opposed to the Chromebooks and the iPads and the, Apples and computers and things of that nature, and our classroom teachers and our RBT you know, and all of that. So we kind of look at that as a whole, but we look at it and where it all filters in. And you will see, and I will turn it over to Scott momentarily, the next pages where I'll jump back in after Scott goes through these first couple, which I call the cheat sheet. As this board recalls at the last budget meeting, I said I always provide a cheat sheet. So if you kind of just look at these next pages, 8 through 12-ish, you kind of have the cheat sheet version as to why certain lines went up, why certain lines went down. And then the level of detail provided on those next pages that I will go into is what our coaches make, what our stipended positions make. Basically what every teacher in the district makes, what every parent in the district makes. So that level of detail is provided for you. And we also show grants, which I'll jump back in and talk about and highlight in a minute. But Scott, if you could jump on up.
Sure. Do you mind if I sit? Because I
Please.
might want to
You can.
toggle through to my notes. So thank you, Michael. So if we look at the first, and I'm going to follow along here. So our first one is our certified teachers, right? So what we did is because we had the teacher negotiations, which I believe went well and everybody was happy. So we used, for budgeting purposes, we used a 3% increase with which we felt very comfortable with, because at the end of the day, most of our teachers are at the highest level and they're going to get 3% anyway. So it didn't really materially affect the number if we had the true step and level amount. So we're very comfortable there. And you know, we're seeing just an increase of 3.10, which, you know, I just want to point out to everybody too, that that's a fixed cost. Like that's a cost that we're going to pay whether we have school or don't have school. And the only way to get it away from that is to take heads away. So I just want to plant that in everybody's ear. And again, we'll just point out we had some retirement. So what we're doing is, you know, as the teachers retire, as individuals retire, we kind of replace them at a level and step that's helpful to the budget, and we'll get some new individuals into our school system. So if we go to the next sheet. So here is here's the one where I'll get into a little bit of detail for. So this is our non-certified, but it just isn't our paras and our BTs. So in this number is also our custodians, our substitutes, our tutors, and our overtime wages. So you might look at this and say, how is it 7.66? But there's other factors in here, which I'll just go over with a little bit more granularity. So there are a couple BTs in here that are in the general fund now that were in grant funding in prior years. So that's why we'd see an increase well above 3%. There's also because we're seeing more individuals take the FMLA, and we've been behind the curve, especially this year. We did increase the budget for that number kind of substantially. So those are really the two big factors that are bringing us up to the 7.66% in the non-cert category. The employee benefits, again, this is so similar to last year. If you remember when we were going over, we had that model with the budget number, and then any adds or subtractions would change that percentage. If we had to come in at 2%, I think was the first round, and then we had to come in lower than that subsequently, unfortunately. So doing that, we didn't have the help. In previous years, we've had the number by now. So hopefully we'll be getting it soon. So just with the health benefit number takes us from the 3% up to almost 4.84 if we keep it the same as what we think it's going to come in. So that's going to be our wild card that we're going to have to think about. And again, I asked last week, I sent an email to the city asking if they had that number, and the new comptroller got back and said not yet. So I am keeping on them because I'm interested to see what that number is too. Also, 158,000 of that is now for new employees, and please correct me if I'm wrong there, Kim. We only offer the HSA program now, so so that's part of what's adding to the increase to that number, is that we only offer the HSA option now. If we go look at the professional services, so this is a line, you might ask, what's the decrease here? So in special ed, they're doing a really good job of keeping everything flat there. So what they're doing is they're just moving. They're trying to stay flat, so they move some of their dollars around, and some of them they took out of the professional service budget. We did have an offset of 25,000 in there that I put in administration, legal, and on other professional, because the past 2 years running, we've just in the administrative piece having to do with expulsions and other areas, we've gone way over budget. So I did increase that by 25,000. I still don't know if that's going to be enough, but I wanted to challenge us, and Michael and I and everybody else at central office, we're actually challenging ourselves and everybody else with this budget this year, because we didn't want to come in higher than what we thought we would. So it was a real concerted effort to get us to where we are now, even without that true health insurance number. So if we go to the next page, again here, this is our infrastructure part. So you'll see an increase here. So again, Dean and I have had initial conversations with Ed and Mario, but we have to have other conversations on what is included and what's not included as far as who's moving what to the new high school. So we just here have a place over $100,000, and we don't even know if that's enough. And I'll just give you a little example, like just to move the science stuff, because there's chemicals involved, is a lot of money. We don't even have a number yet. We're going to get one, but it's a lot of money because, they have to come in with the full
Hazmat suits.
yeah, it's so as we sit here tonight, we don't know if that $100,000 is even going to be enough. But and again, I'm just pointing these things out because we are challenging ourselves to, kind of have a reasonable budget amount for what we think. And I've actually put in a call to, I believe Farmington's building a new high school, and the individual hasn't gotten back to me yet, but my contemporary over there, because I think they're ahead of us as far as construction, and I just want to see what they did. So maybe they give us a number, but we keep going back and forth, and we haven't connected yet. So we'll see if we can get a little bit more there. And also, we're still carrying the $150,000 for the indoor air quality testing that's mandated for us. And so if we go to the transportation too, I just want to speak about that because there was a couple questions of that. But there are really two components. If we just look at our contractual obligation, just what our transportation budget is this year, it's this year would be a 4.89% increase, and that's just the bulk to get our to get the students to the schools. And then the other piece that makes up that difference is really what we spend on the special ed, which isn't part of our contract and is separate. So again, I think they do a really great job of ride sharing when they can. But I also think for budgeting purposes, even though that number might seem a little bit high, really isn't, and a lot of thought went into that number. So again, this is the tuition, and working with Laura and her team, especially Ashley. They got a really good handle on the outplaced students that we currently have and any of the services that are involved. So again, based on what they think we're going to have next year, there is a decrease there. But as we all know, Unfortunately, special education is a wild card, and 1 or 2 students moving in or 1 or 2 students moving out can make and break our budget for that particular year. But we are pretty comfortable, and we think we have some good numbers of the students that we have currently that are outplaced in what's happening over the next couple of months. So we're pretty good there with that number. Okay, so if we come to the supplies again, so it is an increase of $221,000 or 9.70%. But why do we have this increase this year? So I just want to let you know, as the superintendent alluded to, when we had so we did spend money at the end of last year, if everybody remembers, on a lot of supplies, which I knew would benefit us this year, and it has. But again, that's one of my soft spots. So I made sure that, in the supply line, we went through every supply line, even at the admin side, and I was taking out $150 line items that we hadn't had any spending, because as we're doing the budget, we're also looking back on a 5-year look back to see what we've historically spent on certain line items. So we're looking at it at that level of granularity. But everybody seems to know what they have, but the increase is due to the COVID money running out, the ESSER grants running out. They were helping us out substantially over the past couple of years. And now we have the Yonder pouches, which are adding to that. And also going forward, again, which is going to be another fixed cost to supplement our $1 million we're spending on the new reading program. We're spending upwards of $90,000 this year on supplemental supplies for that.
Consumables, but like workbook kind of things. Yeah.
Which is worth every penny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then on the equipment side, this is just working with Dean and going through line item by line item and seeing what we spent in the past. And we did do a lot towards the end of last year with the the waxing and stripping machines, and on fixing some of the tractors and stuff. So that's why you'll see a little bit of decrease there, just from money we spent last year and just trying to look forward to what we might have this year. And that's what we have as far as our budget for next year and how we're kind of categorizing them.
Thank you, Scott. I'll jump in. No one called out that my purple tie matched the increase and decrease. I don't know, Rach, what's going on with that, right?
Oh, that's distracted by the Yoda stuff.
So we often get asked, as many districts do, and we hear the words grant thrown in, right? And what do? I mean, if we didn't have a wonderful grant writer as we do, we would not see the amount of money that we do in our grants. And that would jack our budget up to over 90, which would be a 14.4% increase, which would be a burden on the taxpayers. And, there's a lot of hard work that goes into writing grants. There's a misconception that the grants out there, you just apply and get it. That is a huge misconception. They come with a lot of writing, as Dean could tell you, as he's been sitting down with Donna to do the HVAC grant. Those are pretty thick and cumbersome, but well worth it in the end. And obviously this just shows how worth it is. Before I jump ahead, one of the big questions came up, and I don't mind sharing it. One of the big questions came up: why the increase in some lines when it came to services, purchase services? What we did this year, credit to Mrs. Ferguson, her department, every school had their own purchase services. So, for example, if Torrington bought National Geographic magazine and Vogel bought National Geographic, and the middle school, that was all separate. We brought it all in. It's under one roof now. We get a savings that way to do it as a district wide, as opposed to doing it 6 separate times. So that was something we took a look at and said, that should all be under one umbrella. So when the principals came and shared their budgets and we took that out, they were like, wow, that's pretty cool. And we're like, no, you're still getting it. It's just going to come in at a different cost because we're absorbing it and Sue and her team are going to be overseeing that. So that was a big question that came up a couple of times when we took some of the questions from the board members. But I want to answer that because that's a savings for us. That's a savings for us as a budget. And that really just keeps it under one house. And plus it provides all the schools, not only with the same, but maybe if they didn't think they wanted it at Torringford or Vogel, and Sue thinks it's worthwhile, she can go and have that discussion as well. So, yeah, please.
Can I just shout out to Marissa, because Marissa is the one who called all of these different places and asked for institutional memberships to save us money. So, yeah.
Thanks, Marissa.
Thank you, part of the team there. So, I wanted to highlight that because that was a real good savings. And as Scott said, when we look at it, that with that magnifying glass and that granular approach, that was where we were. You could kind of jump, if you will. We're going to jump to some charts after this. This is the summary detail as I shared. This is that level that Scott shares by account. We wanted to provide that for some people prefer that. Obviously, our graph, how much each piece and how much each comes out of it. Obviously, when it comes salaries, you always see that that's going to be the big chunk, and then benefits. So our salaries and bennies obviously making up a big chunk of our budget, which it makes up a big chunk of everyone's budget across not only the state of Connecticut, but across the country as well. So we are not way different in Torrington. So obviously I shared the level of detail, that little detail. How much do we pay head custodian? How much do we pay one of our cooks? How much do we pay our cafeteria workers? So we wanted to give you that level of detail so that you understand what goes into those numbers when Scott does present them in our monthly financials. And then obviously stipend positions, very important. We've heard that a couple of times. How much does a coach get paid? Well, I can tell you as a former coach, we don't do it for the money. Dean can tell you as a coach, it's obviously for the love of the students and for the game and student athletes. But I think it is important to know what we also compensate our folks, so we have that level of detail as well. And if you could just keep going, Rich, to the charts, if you don't mind. The rest are just, as we said, we took that level of detail. What do all of our staff members get paid? Obviously, names are redacted, but for example, the assistant superintendent, for example, director of HR, director of facilities, the superintendent, a third grade teacher, a fourth grade teacher, a high school English teacher, high school mathematics teacher, all of that level of detail, because I think it is important to share, not only with the board, but with the public, just to share where the dollars are going, because obviously that is the biggest chunk when we looked at our pie chart. And we broke it up by general fund and grant fund. That was the color coding. I hope people appreciated that. And then when we get to, yeah, it's a slow clicker, that's okay. I can talk over the clicks. I think we're almost there.
Sure, that's right.
When we get to our charts. That's the last one, the one more student services. If I remember, just trying to say good memory. Say student services, my memory's pretty good. There we go. So if we look at our demographics, and we've shared this before, real interesting to note that our Hispanic and Latino population, as I shared earlier, is on the rise. And next year, we're going to be over 50%, which is awesome. So hence the need to address that at Forbes and Southwest. And that's what that shows. Our data collection of our ELL population and our non-ELL, and that's a comparative back from 2013 up until now, and you can see the difference there. And I think that's important to know. Our community is changing, and I think that's wonderful, and we embrace that, but it's also important to share that information. Next one. So one more. Oh, sorry, right there. Free and reduced lunch. Go back. Sorry, back. So we do a wonderful job with our food services. We all know that we do food services in-house now, but what do our food services cater? And this is our free and reduced year to year versus our non-free and reduced. And you can see our numbers increasing. So our food services in-house, providing our students with a wonderful meal each and every day. It has been highlighted on Facebook. You'll see some of the photos just from our cafeteria staff and for the product that they're putting out. The partnership grant that our food services was just awarded to work with local farms to get that fresher produce on the plate for our students is wonderful. And that was something that we went out and did. So highlight there. In terms of our enrollment numbers, you've seen this slide a million times, I'm sure. That is our enrollment numbers, and I like the next one a little better. So we can see, while we're declining, we're back on the uptick. And it's interesting because I know as Mr. Scott and Mr. Rinaldi can tell you, the amount of students we enroll lately, each and every day, that number is significantly going up. And we're gonna hover, probably close to the 4,000 range would be my guesstimate, get in that range. Yes.
Really quickly, with the enrollment, is this just the number that's in our buildings every day, or is this the total number of students for whom we're responsible, whether they're doing school choice elsewhere or?
Either way, it's the total, that number here, numbers students we're responsible for. That's correct. Great question. So as you can see, it's up a little, we'll be around that 4,000. So if we can click next, those school slides, one more, the school slides and stuff for a second. Those school slides show the number of grades, so grade 1 teachers, grade 2 teachers. And that number, depending on the number of students and the number of students that we increase enrollment, could change. So instead of having 7 first grade classes, we might have 8, but then we bump our second grade down, and that's fluctuating. And that does not impact our total number of teachers. Does not. So we are not eliminating staff. I said that in the beginning. I'll say that again. We are not eliminating, we're actually adding. But that number can change, just depend on how many classrooms we need to service those students in. Our special ed versus our non-special ed population, we can see that number is increasing for our special education students. And that's kind of in line with across the state trends that we're seeing. We're not different in Torrington. I will say that, how I look at that slide is we provide wonderful services for all students, including our special ed students. So when people move here and we have great services, I think that's a testament to our school system for our both regular and our special education students. So that is not something that is alarming nor a concern, but I think it's something to be proud of. So when we look at our magnet school numbers, this one is an interesting slide because it is a little up and down. However, we are seeing the decrease from 79 to 61. Not significant, but a decrease nonetheless. So I think that's a good thing. And I think that people want to stay in our schools as opposed to go out to those magnet schools. So something that we're proud of to see on the decline because we want all of our students in-house. You could skip that one. So if we look at our VOAG students, and that's steady every year. You can see we pulled it from 14, 15 all the way up. So now, we saw some increases here, but since 17, 18, we're in that triple figure range. Now, students have that choice to go to a VOAG school. I think that number could change a little with our new high school and middle school. I think that number is going to decrease, but once again, we probably wouldn't see that then, 2-year budget cycles out. But time will tell, and I think that keeping that number there, according to state mandates, it would be alarming if that number had went 115, 118, 130. We'd be really in a different spot, but to keeping it around that, it's not an alarm for us at this moment. And I do think that will decrease. And then obviously our tuition costs. The one thing that is concerning, and I'll mention it because it is important, as many of you may have read last week, the governor was looking at revamping the budget. And one of the things on the revamp of the budget was instead of us seeing the savings for the VOAG schools, it was to not put the savings on the school district to make us pay the full price again. And that would up that number significantly. Obviously, that has not gotten passed yet. But that is one of the things he proposed that would affect us. And Scott came to me immediately when the article was published, and him and I had chatted about it. We're at the state's hands right now, but we won't know until that gets approved. I don't know. My gut is telling me because of the opposition that he's received on that I don't think that's going to pass, but I'm not going to play politics either. And obviously our costs showing an increase there from our budget to our actual. And, people always say, well, and I know one of the questions that Mr. Predis brought in tonight from the meeting yesterday, why wasn't that accurately budgeted? Well, that's a very frustrating comment. It is accurately budgeted, but we don't know if a student either then gets outplaced, who happens to need special education services, or even a regular education student, and or, decides to go to the VOAG and happens to have special education. So we do our best, and I think we do a really good job So it's not that we under budget, it's not that we underfund, it's not that we are not looking at those numbers with high level of detail and accuracy. And I think this budget shows that level of detail and accuracy. And we don't use guesstimate math, we use actual numbers and we look at that granularity. So when we want to go and look at that, the answer to that question is, we just don't know. And if we budget for 20 and we only get 10, we're going to get accused of over budgeting. So we base it on that number and we look at the trend and we give our best number. Same with the charter. Number of students, I mean, and this is just to show our charter students that are 504 and special ed. This was pretty cool for our outplacement numbers, keeping steady. And this is what Scott was referring to. This is where Laura and her team really try to do a good job and monitor that so that we don't see a spike back up into the 90s. Because seeing a 78 to a 90 would be significant and our cost would be real significant and have a real significant impact on our budget. So not that we're denying services by any means, we are not, but we are trying to meet our needs in-house as best we can before we use outplacement as a last resort. And we all know the research shows when we have a student in-house, in community, with our teachers, with our staff, with our team, the results we have better control over as opposed to outplacing them. Now, if we cannot meet that student's needs, which ultimately does happen, and that is unfortunate, we also have to look out for the student because their interests are number one and paramount, and that is one that would lead to an outplacement. But I want everyone to know, and that's why I'm sharing it publicly, that's why those decisions are made, and to keep them careful to make sure we want to try to provide for each and every student that we can before making that decision to outplace. And it has nothing to do with a cost saving. It has to do with what's best for our students. Ultimately, if what's best for our students to get outplaced, that is the decision that we would make. And then, once again, you can see from 2018, we kind of had that increase, but then it steadied off. And I know that increase is alarming because even when I shared that, I was like, oh, that's a tough one. But if I cut it here, it wouldn't tell the true story. So we had that sharp increase. And then we've kind of leveled off there for our outplaced. And same here, the combined is pretty flat. And then this last piece that I'm really not going to talk about, but this was a request made by a couple of board members. And we can flick through to the very last page, but this is that level of detail in an Excel style spreadsheet that a lot of people prefer, but we kind of copy pasted the Excel spreadsheet. We also provided the board with copies of the Excel spreadsheet to kind of play with as they wish. And then at the bottom line, the neat part about the document, as you've seen throughout, nothing has changed. We're still at 3.34%. So from the very beginning, when I opened up to when Scott had the presentation, thank you again, Scott, to the very end, that 3.34% number is the number that we feel comfortable with that provides for students, with the exception of the couple of questions that Scott did pose in, Scott, if I may, one being, obviously we have to increase our liability insurance, two being, do we want to increase that overtime cost, if I'm not mistaken? And what was the third again, Scott? I apologize.
Health benefits.
The health is our unknown, which we can't answer at this moment, but the two that I would think the board could request for us and to make a determination would be, is the board okay with us increasing?
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to increase the liability because we just got that's a real number. So that will change this, which we have no issue editing. And then the other issue is, and I thought it was a great comment made by board members, do we increase that overtime so that we don't underfund and get caught in that kind of loophole? So if the board is in agreement with us doing those two items, we would gladly make those edits before our next budget meeting and put those in there, and we'll have those answers to any of the questions. And what I decided to do with all of the questions, just to show everyone that everyone has had questions and they've been answered, I am going to also attach an FAQ sheet. So I'll have the questions out there with the responses so that everyone could see that level of detail that the board has asked for and the level of detail in our responses to the board. And that would also go with our second round of questioning. So we are very, very pleased with this budget. We are very pleased with this budget does for our students. And we are also very pleased to have a supportive board who understands that while we're doing this is to be respectful and to give you the most thorough and accurate response that we can provide, and that's why we're going to share those responses as well. So I wanted to thank everyone for their time, and this will be up live. I know Sloan was feverishly typing over there, but this will be, this will be put on our website, and this will go on our website as a flip book. Rachel found a way to do it today. I'll give her the credit. So it will go the same way it has been presented in our iPad.
I want to know if it's that.
Are you sure I should just be?
Will you take my iPad? That's all good.
Well, I don't think it's.
How about this?
scheduled to go to the full board.
No, it's not. I'm gonna say,
There you
don't
go.
want me to do that.
Committee.
But the committee.
See? See, Kim, I gave I'm stealing another.
Well, that's.
That's okay. No, it's not mine. In an email, at the beginning, he repeated it by next Wednesday. Questions on the actual budget that we've already seen, that you've had?
I mean, so,
I'm sorry, I was speaking. I apologize.
so we were talking about you're looking for us to suggest on the overtime thing and then the facilities.
Those were the two items that we would definitely appreciate the board's support moving forward with, and we would make those, the liability, we kind of have no choice because we were just given that number.
Right.
But obviously with the facilities and the facilities anyway, you're correct, Jeff. So if you think the facilities, instead of 100,000 for the move you want that to be, let's say 200,000, and you want the
OT?
thank you.
Yeah.
The OT to be around the 50,000, I think Scott had alluded to earlier, we would make those increases easily, because I agree, we don't want to underfund those accounts. The hard part with the move, and Scott did a great job explaining it, as did Dean. The new building project is wonderful, and that committee is great, and there's a lot that has been accounted for. But when we're seeing items that have not been accounted for, and now they say, well, fine, we have to do it. Well, of course, we're going to do it. We're moving into two new buildings. But I wish that would have, because not that we would have kept it in a capital budget, or the board would have kept it obviously prior to my arrival, but there would have been at least a better allocation. Because now to say, hey, we need 200 grand. I mean, we all understand why, and I think the community is going to understand why, and the city will understand why. But I do think that would be respectable for that. We put 100 because, as Scott said, we wanted to keep it as close to a respectable number under 3.5 that we could, and we didn't want to just come in and say, let's make it 5%. We could have done 5%, pardon the expression, in our sleep, but that would have not been respectful of your time. And that certainly wouldn't have been respectful of everyone's work that was put into this budget. So that's why we came in and we really took it down and drilled it down to the point where, as Scott had mentioned, one of the line items was down by $7,800. And yeah, $7,800 is a drop in the bucket with an $80 million budget. But when we take that really fine look at it, we wanted to show you that we're looking at every single line item now that we have our team in place, and the board is part of that team. And that's why I thank the board for looking at it with that level of detail as well. So you're 100% correct. And that was a long-winded answer to your question. I apologize. But yes, if we can get the go ahead to increase the moving expenses line and to increase the overtime, we would then make those adjustments. And hopefully by the next meeting in March, we will have our insurance number. Hopeful. We should have had it by now, as Scott said. In my former districts, we would have had it way earlier, and I will say that.
Well,
But
you asked for it in
This
December
Torrington.
too.
we did ask for it in December, and
One of those
it's
things.
very frustrating for Scott and I, and Scott did ask again, and I was CC'd on the email, so my hope, and I will say it is a hope, is that maybe they're sharpening their pencil and we're
Gonna get a
I know,
better
Mr.
price?
Corey, I didn't want you to laugh at me. I said I was hopeful. I know, thank you. I appreciate
It's
that.
sad laughter.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remain positive, so but I do think that it is gonna creep us up, unfortunately.
So focused on those very three questions that you'd asked about the moving expense. We moved 5 buildings, about 5. We played a huge moving game. You're trying to be accurate in your budgeting. I respect that. Do we know what it cost us last time to get an idea? 100,000, 200,000. I know inflation and all, but we did move probably an equivalent amount of equipment. We moved desks between all the schools. We moved
Yeah,
a ridiculous amount of stuff.
I don't remember the figure.
I don't
but we
either,
have it
but if
somewhere.
you're looking for accurate, and you are expressing your interest in, I'd support whatever you need to do it, but if you're trying to be, you might
Well,
have
I
some
think
guideline.
the difference is that we're moving one building, the high school. And then I think that, back to Scott's point on waiting to hear from Farmington, what did it cost them to move?
Yeah, I gotta
more
ask
like
him.
the chemistry equipment and all of that, any chemicals and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
I gotta
it-
talk to him, because I think we're responsible for the copiers too, I think. I've been hearing, so we really, we need a definition on what we're responsible
We-
for and
the
what we're not
copiers from
responsible
where?
for.
Yes.
Well, just moving them,
That's a not a
Like
nice
from-
fee. Just so
The
you-
high school, it's in high school.
And if we can't.
Well, why would, that's ridiculous. Why wouldn't the building committee
Put a little copy.
accommodate for that?
Yeah.
But we lease them, they should move them.
So
I was wondering why the company wouldn't come in and move their own equipment.
Well, we want to try to-
Yes.
Better idea.
just,
They
it's
won't.
one of those,
So
the
so
gene's
Ed,
gonna.
Ed's going to sit
Oh.
down with, when
Little
Ed comes back
fairies.
from
Yeah,
vacation,
little
he's gonna sit down with
fairies.
Dean,
Yeah.
Scott, and myself, and
I don't
Mario,
know if I
and
can
Sue will be
use that
present at
word.
that meeting. There's a lot of items that they. I don't wanna say they had in theory,
Mhm.
but not in reality, because that's not a good description. They were very, very thorough. So, for example, all of the new furniture and equipment that we're getting in both new buildings,
Mhm.
right? But there is still stuff from the buildings that have to be moved, right? So it's the gray area. So for example, the one thing that the new building committee did amazing was the library piece. The
Mhm.
library component, they dotted every I, crossed every T. There was a minimal cost back on the district, but the new building committee did a great job on that.
Mhm.
Then we fast forward to the science piece where
Mhm.
they did a good job on the first part, and then the second part, they were like, all right, Dean, tag you're in. And it's like, wait, time out. Why are we tagging Dean in?
The hazmat
So,
suits and everything
exactly.
else.
So when Dean got tagged in, that's when Scott started going a little grayer. And when Mr. Scott was at that meeting as well, I think him and I were actually took a couple extra grays. But I think those are the issues. So it's not as if, it's not that they didn't plan well, and I don't want ever.
I'm
that to
not
be said. No,
making
no,
that
no,
suggestion
no.
because they are amazing. They
I-
have done, but I'm just curious as to what part of like,
Yeah.
why are we inheriting a lot of the moving expenses?
I think because when any new building project that gets funded at the rate that we're funded by the state of Connecticut, there are only so many things you can put in that will be reimbursable.
That'll cover, okay.
Correct,
all
and
right,
I think
that's helpful.
I think they've uncovered and turned over every stone
Okay.
that could be, and that's credit to them.
Mhm.
And then what's left is what's on us. So, when we were saying the moving even from here to the new building,
Mhm.
that there's a cost involved, right? And while people just make assumptions, well, Dean and his guys can do it. It's not as simple as that. It's a moving truck, it's a moving company, it's,
Time.
so there's components that Dean and his crew, may be able to do,
Mhm.
but there are components that there's no way they can do. So to your question originally,
So do you
Jeff,
think
I
that's
don't,
not enough,
where,
even
I
200?
think, I think, 100 is definitely shoe strap. 2 to 250, I think would make us breathe a little easier. Dean wouldn't be up at night asking you every day about it.
Right,
But
It depends on how much stuff you have to move. The initial question was the copiers and the lease.
yeah.
So to that point, I'm not seeing ours, Rachel would have that, but most copier contracts
Yeah, they don't want you touching
stay
their
there.
stuff.
They don't want you to touch the machine. And there's, if you want to move it, a lot of times there's a predisposed fee in this to move it.
Started with the
Some
fruit loops
contracts
for
say you're welcome
breakfast.
to move it yourself.
Mhm.
However, anything that if we come out to see after you've moved it, that
Well,
we can
yeah,
possibly attribute back to the, is
Yeah.
not under your contract.
Right.
So there's
So-
always a fee. Our town. is
Even
paying
if
a
you
fee.
move it from one room to another.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
that's
I
fine.
know that they move it within the building. I
Everyone's.
don't know about 2 other buildings. I mean, I'm sure they do.
They do, but
So-
it's usually a fee.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, let's, without getting hung up on moving copiers and stuff like that, what's a comfortable number? 250? 250, yeah.
man beats on
I
my
think
door
we-
every day.
Yeah.
It's who's responsible for the move too, right? Like if you think back to when we did the e-school thing, who packs everything up and then, right, we started having that
Mhm.
conversation and then you start cha-ching, cha-ching. Mhm.
If I recall last time, we worked closely with one of the,
Daily.
with one of the local.
It was
companies.
daily.
Local moving
It was-
company, I was
yeah,
gonna say, I think.
daily.
They were very, I believe at the time, it was a very advantageous. They helped us out a bit, but
Mhm.
we probably have to pursue some of those avenues to help save the
Well, I
cost.
already have Lippincotts. I don't know if he used them or not, though, but I know the owner, so he came by and he's gonna help us move some of the music equipment that we have to do. But
Right, moving pianos, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were really good. They had, the last time they gave us the drums, they just charged us. There was some arrangement that
yeah,
people, the local community members stepped up and.
Well, right,
So
'cause their
it's-
kids went through the school.
So in the interest of time with the committee, just say 250 is a fair
Right.
number for now, and then as we start to
The
get
more
through the
things get
process, we
uncovered
may
and-
revise it down or up.
Of course.
I think building that in now is a
But if we
safe.
start there,
Right.
No reason not.
because you really gotta kind of go through a building to say, what are we gonna do with that? What are we gonna do with that? What are
Well,
we
and
gonna
that's
do?
what part of the
What are you gonna do with
district
that?
committee.
Until you kind of go
do.
through.
Thank you for that.
And-
What about for the overtime?
Mm,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was discussed at the building committee meetings, but we don't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
And the teachers don't know what
Mhm.
they wanna move, and we don't know what's gonna be new yet, or what's
Great
gonna,
point.
you know,
Mhm.
and how much the teachers are going to be
Sandy's moving
excited
it
about
up,
to
is
move
what I heard.
themselves.
Well, wait,
to
are
high
we
school.
gonna pay- are we gonna pay for, to move the teacher's personal items?
So we're still in discussions with that because Sandy's
Yeah,
here.
gotta
So
ask. I know, I
that's how we-
have to ask.
We're in discussions in
I don't
terms
think
of,
we can last
for example, we
time.
talked,
No.
we talked with
Nothing
some of
personal.
high school
Everybody
folks
pack their
that
own personal
Right.
everyone boxed their own room anyway.
Mhm.
And normally you would box it if you were gonna have your room painted in the summer or whatever the case may be. So it's the same concept in terms of the physical move of the boxes. Some teachers, like myself, when I was a teacher, I didn't like anyone touching my stuff because I had my boxes arranged in a certain order.
Mhm.
But if they don't want that, I think that's something that Dean and his crew would be able to take the actual packed boxes, and as long
Put
as
it in
it
a
said
truck.
Wilson, room 101, they could move it to room Wilson 101.
That's what we did the last time.
Right.
And teachers were responsible for
That's what was me.
packing and
Saying what I
moving
was.
their own
I was
personal
that teacher,
items.
so-
Right,
But anything that was district-based teachers packed if they
And-
wanted to pack or moved if they wanted to move. And we also built in days.
Mhm.
Teachers to do that.
Yeah.
That's how we did
and
it
also
last
if they
time.
didn't want something, they would put it in the hall, and then
Mhm.
anyone, could, like,
Right.
you know, tag sale, come and get what you
Right,
want.
I think this is slightly
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
though, because it's a new building.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking
Very
about,
different.
I'm
It's very
think-
different.
well, I'm thinking about when
Yeah.
Torringford was renovated. There were restrictions, and I don't know who imposed those, but about what things could be brought in, like there was no personal furniture
That was
allowed.
Bill, that was
and-
Was
that the administrator?
who
Okay.
imposed those things.
Okay, all right.
So I know everybody's focusing on going to the new high school and middle
everyone
school.
else can shuffle too.
Yes,
We also have other
Right.
but
schools that nobody's
Yes.
paying attention
Yeah.
to right now. not paying
After
fall.
no, but the
Yeah,
books were
that's a
taken
different-
care of for that move
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And obviously the furniture will be in play already. So that's gonna come down to more, I think, the teacher boxing, but you're right, there'll be some stuff we have to
Yep.
look at as well.
So I think I just,
7 and 8 wouldn't be moving yet.
Let's hold out, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the
That's
next
already
budget
5.6.
season.
to sort of bring us back to the scope of.
Rein it in.
Meeting, would the committee accept a $250,000 budget number to start with? And then we can always, as more work is done on this over the next few months, revise it from there.
I would think anything that needs to be changed for the budget, we would leave up to you.
Certainly at the moment, it's your budget. That was what I.
No, I
Right,
just
it's
wanted.
your budget.
No, in full, I wanted to just
Absolutely.
I wanted the board's input on that before we just up the
Well, yeah,
line
because
item.
if you just throw a $250,000 item in there, you're gonna get hammered with
Yeah,
questions.
exactly.
Right, discussing it and
Mhm.
such, but yes, and then overtime.
Yeah, and the overtime was the second bullet.
Okay.
The overtime, Scott would love to not hear from me every month on that, one, I'm sure, but
He did say that, no.
I'm sure he did.
I did.
We're all, yeah. So, we're over, I fully would support changing the number, although you had asked about the facility use back in policy and facility, we talked about the facility use fees. The thought was, yes, the custodial fees would go to offset custodial overtime, but the other fees, because you are charged separately, and some organizations are charged some and not the other. That we would take the money that was facility rentals and put that towards maintaining those facilities. So it was kind of it was originally designed to be a split, a somehow split of the
Mhm.
fees. So that refinishing floors or fixing
there was some money
repairing
there with
things
it.
or something
Right.
needed to happen to keep the actual facility in place was a split. But you definitely need to go up on the number. We've been talking about it for years, even when I wasn't in the chair.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate that. And we had talked about that and honestly, that was one that Scott had came with and we wanted to, as I said, we wanted to keep it as close to that number as possible, but we also said that that was a great question to share with the board because we didn't want to just once again put that number in there. So we appreciate that and we could definitely go. What would you feel comfortable with, Scott, asking the board to put that number up? I think you had mentioned it earlier. Was it 50K?
there was 150.
I think 40 additional is fair. But that's before, yes, I think that would, I think that's.
I mean, 150 seems like a lot. No, that seems like a lot.
Let's,
How much over have we gone
we're already.
the last few years?
I think we've been at like 90, 80.
So last year we budgeted 80 and came in at 130. And then the year before that, we were at 77 budget and came in at 105. So
This year we're at 100% of expected in January.
So 50. maybe, yeah.
50?
40 or 50,
Right.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, which puts us at like 140, somewhere in that neighborhood, 140, 150.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
But
50
you
is-
wanted to increase it by
So I want to go
150,000.
to 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my
So
thought. but-
increase of
Okay.
50.
So increase for
Custodial overtime only?
That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Scott's got the projection. Support whatever Scott sees.
Custodial and
Right,
clerical, I
right.
think.
Custodial and clerical?
Yes.
If you divvy it up as you feel like you need, probably most of it would end up in custodial.
It's just where the-
Yeah.
So an increase of $50,000 would be a budgeted amount of 146. So it's close to 150.
Yeah, that's.
And if this number
And I
evolves,
do think we'll see a decline under the new contract too, with your start and end times. Because we're paying clerical right now, right, overtime to be out there doing bus duty. So hopefully
Well, just to be clear, I was just
we're not.
specifically talking about the custodian overtime line.
oh, it wasn't combined.
That's just the.
So that's just straight custodial overtime.
Yes.
Oh, it's Paris? Then why is the clerical overtime?
That was for overtime from office and summer help.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
I thought that was
Yeah,
bus
we-
duty.
Okay.
Had a lot of transition going on.
So as long as we'll be able to adjust, I'm just thinking about the move and manpower and things like that. I know you said that, we'll have a certain dollar amount for the move that could also go towards the custodial overtime if needed at that point.
Well,
Is it,
if
is that what? Is that
if the custodians end up doing the
Yeah.
move,
So,
yes.
yeah, or any overtime that is
We can do a
incurred
line trip.
from the move.
That's correct.
So at least it looks,
Does,
Because it would still be associated under the move. You're
Yeah,
correct. Dean.
yeah.
does, any of the board members have a feel for what they're gonna do with Midgeon? Like sell it and give us the money like they use?
I don't know if that was the comment.
If we remember, that's all that they gave us last year as far as a budget increase. was
Right,
Basically the sale of East School.
the serious answer is it's probably not gonna be nearly as much as we got for East School. Partly because Ed Advance wanted to be nice to the city, to the Board of Ed and this building, we never remediated some pretty serious environmental issues with this structure and its parking lot. Because we don't need to, because it's not an actual school. And my sense, and I wish Gary was here, but my sense is that no developer is gonna pay a substantial price for this property. Because there's so much money they're gonna have to spend before they're allowed to pull a permit to build it or to renovate it or build anything here. So I don't know if it's gonna be a sell it for $1 type of deal, but I don't think the city's gonna get a lot of money for it.
is there a time frame when they're looking to not have it?
We kind of would make the choice for them in a sense, because we're
We
the
would
ones who
turn it
decide
back
to give
over.
it back to them.
Right,
Once we're no longer using it and don't think we're ever gonna need to.
because it's their building, we're just using
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
But they probably try to dump it as soon as they can. Any city would want to put it back on the tax rolls. I don't think. And this maybe would have to be a conversation with the mayor, but I don't think the city has any envisioned use for this building beyond what it's already being used for. So they're probably going to try and get rid of it fairly quickly. It's got roof problems and they don't want it.
And it's not going anywhere until the 25-26 cycle anyways.
Right.
Literally.
I was gonna say, because while it's nice that we're moving in December, we need that time to,
It's 25.
Empty the building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Dean can't be on a.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna be moving a lot of stuff, but there's stuff. In
the basement.
Well, that's
I was
what I'm
gonna
thinking.
say, it's gonna take us
There's like-
2 years to go through the
Do that.
basement.
Yeah,
They've got a lot, I was just saying, there's a lot.
We didn't want them to check us out in January.
Yeah, I
Right,
can't speak
yeah.
for,
I don't want an eviction notice.
right, I can't speak for all 10 members of the board, but
Issues.
my sense
I
would be
think
you
we
folks can
be
hold on
helpful.
to this as long as you need to, and we wouldn't vote to turn it over to them until you tell us that you're done with it. As long as it's not costing us tremendous sums of money. to
Right, if
keep
there's
it.
some repairs that have to be done here and there over the course of the time that you're still moving,
Yeah.
cleaning it out, of course, we're gonna honor that.
25-26 would be the earliest. That's 6 months after you move anyways.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of our.
I've wanted this
We didn't
building
wanna
empty
give-
for a long
Yeah.
time.
Not that.
We can afford to wait.
I don't want to come on January 2nd and see the yellow sign. on the
Right.
door.
No, they can't throw it out unless we
That wouldn't
stop
be
it
nice.
for education
Oh, okay.
purposes.
Right.
The last thing, the third thing was you said was health insurance. So we carry that at 105, 110. There's always this back and forth with the city. And you haven't, so I'm only asking because we have changed this. We've changed this over the years as to what we end up paying, what we say we're gonna pay, what we're not paying. And so I know you're working with the city, but it would be helpful to know what you're. Because last year we budgeted and we did something different than what budget showed.
Correct. We will have, there'll be some clarity around that next Wednesday night
Okay, great.
at the full board meeting, 100%. That will help.
I know it. Go ahead.
I just have a quick sort of general process thing. So. Like I noticed in the presentation in the original and when we're doing the question and answers, there are like some minor revisions that are gonna end up being made and things like that. So my sort of preferred method would be still to email them to you all like we do and have them be addressed. But I don't know that it needs to sort of sit and wait for the committee's approval if it's something like an error or a minor adjustment. And I guess it's really up to the budget committee more than it is to me. But like my preference has always been to get a smoothed out document at the second reading, right? So if I notice that there's a, I don't know, $100 typo somewhere, stuff like that, right? If it all just gets changed based on what your needs are and what our sort of catches are, and then we get a clean version at the next part of the process, that would be preferred for me, but I'm not sure what works for you or what the committee thinks.
No, I think that's totally appropriate. Thinking ahead of the next round of questioning till next Wednesday, we'll sit down as a team, work through those answers. Once we have those responses, we'll attach them again to the FAQ, that continual question list. And then any edits we make in there will be always real time, and I'll always share the most up-to-date version. And then prior to that next meeting, even if it changes 2 or 3 times prior to that meeting, when we come to that meeting is when the next up-to-date version will be published online again.
Then can we see what it was and then the difference and then the updated?
Oh, you'll have that, that's never gonna change. I'll never change that copy for you.
But I'm saying the copy that's gonna come to us.
Yeah.
Will it show what it was?
Oh, absolutely. And like in the line items we talked about tonight, you're talking about?
Like a
Yeah.
Or
highlight.
just in general? Of course, yeah. Just like we did the last one, when I said, for example, page 10 had to be altered. So yes, any alterations like that would be.
No, she wants to
No.
actually highlight it in color, like like.
Well, not
highlight the
highlighted,
well-
but I want to see it in the document itself, like,
Change.
right, like,
Right.
line item 5210.
Sure. No
It
problem.
was 10,000,
It's,
we took off 1,000, now.
So is
this
the
what it
narrative
is.
okay for that, like he did in this one?
That's gonna get busy otherwise.
Well, I think
Yeah,
the,
that's what
I
she's,
think the, so I'm thinking,
uh-huh,
if I could
Mhm.
throw this out there. So there's 2 things I like. You're right, we need to lock it down. So the place where I think makes the most sense, which you will see, are the last pages of the document, because that is the actual line item. And that's the line item that we would be changing. Like if I was just to change one of the sheets that just had 20 items on it, you really wouldn't know what it was we were changing.
that's what she wants to see, what you changed.
I just want
No,
to
I-
see not the individual line item,
Okay,
like say 5190, other salary.
oh, so like we did on the first Cliff Notes pages you're talking about? Like the big
Can you
chunky
show
at
us
the
what
beginning?
page?
No, am I missing something? I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. The Excel spreadsheet used to have columns.
Right,
So that it would happen is revision one, your base budget was column C, revision one was column D, and revision two was column, so you could see the progression. I think New World
Right.
Next. I actually,
that's
it's
how we
almost,
used to have
So is
it.
that
We
what Scott
did?
was talking
Yeah.
about at the very end where we included
it
the?
was called
It was
levels.
like that,
It was
yeah, it was like
levels.
that in theory, but it always ended up a jumbled mess.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we
Yeah,
can
you
make.
couldn't
it-
follow it. I couldn't.
I mean,
don't know,
there, I
maybe
think
you
there's
could.
two ways we could do it, Ellen, to answer your question.
You're talking about this one?
Yeah, I mean, so that was where Scott was referring to. So if we change the line item here, it goes right across to show the alteration. We could do it on that Excel spreadsheet that we shared with everyone, and or we could do it on like pages 8 through 12. So for example, on page, from my memory now, 12 on the digital book. If on page 12 of the digital book, for example, Dean's item, that's gonna change automatically right now, right? So if we look at where it said the 100 grand that Scott had referenced, right, for the moving cost,
Where was that under?
was that page 12, Scott?
The committee has to decide.
Yeah, thank you. Ellen.
No, not for you, just generally.
That's under
I
equipment.
don't know that the committee has to decide on the format so much as just, this is what we would like.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if
Maybe
we
you
put it there.
Work it out
everyone's
after.
okay.
I mean,
Right, it just, it's.
The narrative
It's
part is
8:42
okay
PM,
too,
and
but-
we're talking about Excel columns. No, it's not your fault.
For me to,
When I make the first alteration and send it out, if there's something more specific,
I can't believe
zap it back in a question and I'll do my best.
but if you use the same document, okay, and you have, say postage, okay, it's 55.30.
Yep.
Okay. You start out with
Oh, I think I know.
14,000.
Okay. I got you.
Then you change it to 15,000.
I got you.
So the first iteration was
I got
14, the second one is 15.
Done.
This is the-
I know where
You
you
know
are.
what I
I know where
mean?
you are.
Where
I
are
know
you
where
gonna put that though? Because I don't want, I
Rather
don't
than
wanna
a
jump it up.
narrative.
Nope, so it'll be, yeah, so it basically.
81,350.
Right, so you, yeah,
But don't you want us to?
right, right.
All right, just another.
Yep, I got it. Yep, 100%. I got it, Scott. Yep.
It can be in the.
Yep, I got you. No problem. I know what you,
By
I know
account.
what you want. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
And it'll be the same thing in the chunky, but yeah, I got you.
It'll be in this one.
Yeah,
All right,
I got it. I know what you want. I got you.
Okay.
It's the same,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's in one place and I can
so-
see it in one place.
And I'm a Cliff Notes guy, so I got you.
Yeah, no, I said no.
100%. Yep.
PL number, and it's just. the
I got it.
sheets.
Not a problem. We got
I'm
you.
a paper person. I'm bold.
You don't like your?
I like it, yes.
It's gonna make a great paper.
Whenever your granddaughter show you how to use it.
That's
Everyone
right.
loves it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Jeff
And
already
Jeff.
had one, see?
I do have a news one.
Okay, so what I want to say was, in previous years, we've had the insurance people come to us and present to us.
Since I've been on the board, I've never had an insurance presentation.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Not since I've been on either, in the
So-
last 6 or 7 years.
Right.
Oh,
Not,
We haven't seen
so there
that
has
yet.
not been one in at least
But it's
6
a good
years.
idea that like after the board meeting, because you said there's some further information coming. It's not a bad idea because we're considering making some serious changes
right.
to speak with them.
They have them present to us.
Mr.
I
Spurgis.
definitely think it's well within our right. And well within the board's right to have a presentation after. I would just suggest waiting until we get our number. I don't want to withhold the number longer. Not that
No,
that will,
right, right,
not that
yeah.
that
Yeah.
will, but yeah, I'm not saying they would play that game, but I think it's just important.
Well,
To,
they kind of know what
one would
they're
think,
looking at.
I would hope, but we have not gotten a number, so I don't want to
Yeah, I know,
speculate.
I know.
But I agree. I think it's a great presentation for the board to listen to our insurance broker and break down everything and have any questions on the.
They
pluses
came
and
to the
minuses.
budget committee, meet one of the budget.
And Scott and I
Not
can
in
make
the-
that
since
request.
You've been,
I'm on the
That
last
would-
6 or 7 years.
previous to that,
So it'd
so they
probably
came
be
every
good.
I'm
year.
sure they did,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
and I would,
They have
I
not.
think it's a good idea. I'm with you.
So if you
absolutely.
could.
We'll mention it to them.
Try to
That's not a
fit
problem.
it in. Okay. Okay, anything else?
On the budget.
Yeah.
If- I appreciate all the effort you guys have put in.
Thank you.
I,
We appreciate that.
Really.
I hope at one of the meetings, I appreciate the emails back and forth. I get that, let you do them all at once. But the 3 questions I asked, we went back and forth like 6 times in 30 minutes and answered a bunch of questions that saves 14 emails and 2 weeks of back and forth. Are we going to, as a committee, ask for a time to have some of that clarity? We can save you guys a ton of work, and you guys know the answers to a lot of these things off the top of your head.
Okay.
I find it valuable as a board member to be able to have an interaction quick, and maybe you have to say, hey, you know, I don't know the
Quick
answer to this.
interaction, like, it's almost like we're rehashing the entire budget. When you open it up to more questions, we have literally had this for 3 weeks.
I've asked the
You
questions.
have to, so, I mean, to my point, and I've said this a few times, if you have more questions, why have they not been submitted?
They will, we got more information, so I will submit more
All right.
questions. It's just sometimes this is new, and historically, you guys have had enough sat on the other side. You've had an opportunity to have a back and forth, so you get an answer with some context, which helps. Maybe if I email the question incorrectly, or we'll say without enough detail, it gets misinterpreted, or your response might get misinterpreted. Sometimes there's just an easier place to have a quick, I say quick back and forth. You guys could put me on a timer if you need to, but
No, it's not a matter of,
John would love that.
it's not a matter of any avoidance, Jeff. It's a
I'm not
matter,
suggesting-
no, I didn't think you were, but it's a matter of, for us to be thoughtful in our responses and our replies, because what happens, unfortunately, and I agree, there's a lot of conversational pieces that could come out of it and follow-up questions that could be asked and answered relatively quickly. But to put someone on the spot and have a rough number, I don't like having a rough number, and I don't like someone giving, not to say anyone from the team would give wrong information. I believe everyone here can answer the questions in their sleep. I mean, I think I memorize pages at this point. So it's not a matter of that. It's just a matter of being respectful of all of you and of all of your time and of all of the hard work that goes into it. So if there's a follow-up, quick question or follow-up, like tonight when we came with those 3 questions, because we know there were going to be questions that had to be answered and supported by the board. That was us doing our homework from those list of 43 questions that we asked and answered. We didn't just sit in the room, bang out the responses and hit send, right? And I'm not saying anyone thought we did that, but it's just to have that level of respect to our responses to each and every board member who asked those questions. And so it's not about anything other than, it's not that we can't answer a follow-up to it, but we felt that was more productive. And that's why I said I'm going to share the FAQ so that everyone sees the level of questions that were asked and answered, so that even when we have our public meeting, maybe public was going to come to ask a question and then say, oh, that was already answered in question 22 of the FAQ. Not that I'm not encouraging them to not come and have a cup of coffee with Scott and I and the team, but maybe that they don't have to do that because they had that document. So that's really the rationale behind why it was different. And it was really to be respectful of all the board members and your time, number one, and to give you a thorough answer. Not that, for example, when Sue leaned over tonight and said, consumables for the reading, right? That was one of the answers we actually wrote in there, but to reiterate that this evening, it's not a problem. But let's say she would have said, oh, the consumables are going to be 172,000. But we only did 90. You know what I mean? To come off the cuff and to give an incorrect answer isn't respectful of the board, and it's not respectful of all their hard work and time that they put in. That's why those responses take so long to answer back, and they're so accurate and they're so detailed. But to do a follow-up, that would be kind of like a quick, hey, thank you, like you just said, for the hard work. Can you just fill me in on how we're looking at the 250 mark? That's not a problem. We can have that. That's a conversation as opposed to a question, in my opinion. But we want to make sure that this document goes forth. We are a team. I've said it a million times. The board is part of the team. And when we put this document forward and I officially hand it over to the board and it becomes the board's document, I want the board to be 100% versed and understandable with that FAQ piece as well. So I hope that I know that was way long-winded for a response. I apologize, but I am pretty passionate about that. So
I think also maybe the point you're trying to make also is we might have questions that just come up as we're sitting here.
sure,
So if we can ask you the question and then you get back at us, back to
Sure.
us the next meeting.
100%.
So it's not that you can only send in questions till next Wednesday. It's any questions that we might have, anyone might have.
But at a certain point, these are going to have to become working meetings.
Yeah.
So I totally understand what you just said.
Yeah.
But that is not how it's gonna end up working in the next 2 months, and I think we should all just acknowledge that now. That these are gonna become working meetings right up to the last minute.
Yeah.
So I see what everybody is saying. I also think more than anything at the budget committee level, it's up to Ellen, and at the Board of Ed meetings, it'll be up to me and Sue. And I can tell you as the guy who runs those meetings that like there's gonna be a lot of discussion around the budget, and I'm not gonna stop it because that's gonna be the sort of last stop on the train before we're voting on the budget. We're doing a little work at these things. is, I
My
guess.
concern right now is that we only have 4 Board of Ed members here. And it's a budget subcommittee meeting, so are we going to, I don't want to rehash the entire budget at our full board meeting because no one else is coming to the subcommittee meeting. So do we make these board meetings so that we do have people here? Because and not that I don't want to just sit and rehash it 5 more times before we meet with the city, but I don't. So you guys are gonna ask all these questions, nobody else is here. They're gonna show up to a meeting, ask the same questions, and it's gonna go on and on. So how do we avoid doing
Well,
that?
that's why I like the FAQs. Because everything is answered and it's right there and it's.
That still
continuous.
doesn't stop people that have not showed up to the meeting from asking those meetings.
It doesn't, and they unfortunately, from your perspective, maybe they have every right to do that, right? They're board
Well, they
members
should
and
come
we're
to the
asking them to
meeting, right,
cast
but
their
they should-
vote.
They should come to the meetings though. What are we doing wrong that they can't, that they're not here?
It's not.
What do we need to do?
It's encourage them to come to the budget.
Give
meeting.
an apple tablet.
I think you do also solve some of this because you are, in the back and forth happens
Can we,
here.
during the subcommittee
sure.
meeting actually, and talk about how the Board of Education runs meetings? Because I feel like that's a little out of scope, and also we don't need to keep
Mhm,
lots of people
right.
here for that.
Okay.
Sorry to
Mhm.
cut you off. Is my suggestion. I'm not enough.
Your call on church subcommittee.
Okay, so topics for future meetings. How about budget?
How about it?
Okay.
So moved.
Comments for the good of the order? I'll start with
Nothing.
you.
Thank you.
All good.
All set, have a good night.
Nice budget presentation. Excellent.
That was nice.
Thank you all.
Great presentation, Michael, Scott.
No, thank you to the team. There's no one person. It was a team effort, and the board, as I said a million times, is part of this. So with the document in front of you, the book, which I think is a cool way to present it, and I can tell you we're probably the one in the state that does it that way. So pretty excited about it. But thank you for all.
Thank you to central office and your team for all the work that they did in putting it together.
And thank you to Sarah Coolidge for her little.
Oh, yeah, she gave some magical fingers on there too. Thank you. Good recognition.
Thank you all for your work.
I appreciate everybody's work and sticking around late at night and answering questions. To be continued.
Oh, I love that they feel like
More binders.
I find it yours.
That's it. You're done.
And thank you to all the buildings also for all of this, and you know it backwards and forwards, most of you. Some of us don't so much, and
Have we been adjourned?
also others that board members and community don't either, and it's nice to have the FAQs
I agree.
and
And they'll
you
be
know,
up there as well.
and the same questions might come from different people, you know, the same question, so great job, everyone.
Thank
So moved.
Fingernail.
Okay.
Way to go.
I don't wake you up.
At 8:15.